Joel, you can have this chair.
Everybody here tonight, and the ones that on the CRC board that cannot be here but are here by telephone, I appreciate their effort. And Todd, if you'll just monitor those for us, keep us abreast of that. With that being said, I'd like to call the order. And Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Here.
Mario Collins.
Here.
Sandra Smith.
Can't hear.
Here. Wally Germany.
Here.
John O'Neill.
Here.
Hunter Keeler.
Here.
Ronald Foreman.
Here.
Tom Autumn.
Here.
Sandra Buckham.
Here.
Robert Lane.
Here.
Kimberly Skinner.
Here.
Lance Hill.
Here.
Stephen Douglas.
Here.
Charles Keith.
Here.
Glenn Owens.
Here.
Leonard Johnson.
Here.
Holt Brewer. Thank you, sir.
That being said, we'll stand for prayer and then the Pledge of Allegiance. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity for the gathering of these citizens of Columbia County. We pray for your blessing upon the people that traveled here and the ones that are at home, Father. We ask that you'll have your blessing upon this meeting for those who attend and those who have things to say. We ask that you bless America, bless this county, and thank you for all your blessings you've given us. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we get to the remarks of interested citizens, there will be any item that is brought up on the agenda to be acted on by the board. There will be a time for comments at that time also. But at this first block is for any comment that any interested citizen would like to say. And before I do that, I'd like to read you the rule number 2 of the CRC board. Citizen participation at meetings. The commission will entertain public comment germane to all agenda items. The citizens of Columbia County who attend the meetings of the Charter Review Commission shall be given the opportunity to comment before the commission discusses items on the agenda to be voted on. In cases of meetings in which an invited speaker is in attendance, the presenter will speak first, public comment will then be taken, and then the commission will discuss and vote if necessary. Citizen comment on any one subject shall be limited to 3 minutes, subject to extension of additional time in the discretion of the chairperson. The commission may impose other reasonable limitations on the total time to be allocated to public participation on any item. Each agenda shall include a section during which, quote, remarks of interested citizens, unquote, may be made to the commission. Interested citizens shall be afforded an opportunity to comment on matters germane to the agenda or matters to come before the commission. When you get up to speak, I'll ask if you identify yourself and give your address and then speak. And with that,
Mr. Chairman, if I may raise just a point of order, there's a number of people in the audience, including myself, following that CDC guideline where you encourage not to spend as much time out that's not necessary. If the chair would entertain it, I'm certain that most of the people here tonight are here to address the issue as it relates to the operation committee. If the chair would be willing to move that item up to be the first item to be considered from the committee, and that that the in-person comment takes place prior to any comment that you may have received via email, Mr. Foreman has received via email. So basically, I'm asking to move the operation meeting up so these people who are here for that, they want to leave, they can leave, and not have to sit through the entire meeting until we get down to that. And that the in-person comments take place before the comments that you may have received email and the form may have received email.
any objections by the board?
Unless there's, how about from the citizens? It's their time.
Again, the Citizens, the remarks of interested citizens, I take it that everybody's here for the voting at large issue. Is that a general consensus? With that being said, Mr. Foreman, attorney,
Yes, sir.
I'll give you the floor for the Operations Committee findings for the voting at large issue.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Ms. Hoshihara was going to try to call in. I didn't hear if she did report online.
I'm here on the call.
Okay, Ms. Hoshihara, would you like me to read the findings or would you like to do so?
Either way, I'm happy to read the findings.
Hard time hearing up here.
This finding was presented to the Operations Committee at its May 11th, 2020 meeting. And it's regarding the single member versus at-large voting. The Columbia County Charter currently provides for a 5-member Board of County Commissioners elected from single-member districts. Under the single-member districting system, each candidate is required to live in the district in which they are elected and are chosen only by voters in that particular district. To supporters of single district elections, this system represents an opportunity to decrease the impact of big money and business interests in county commission campaigns, and representatives are viewed as being more likely to be responsive to hometown issues. To opponents of the system, single-member districts are viewed as being detrimental to the broader collegial approach to county business and serve to limit the number of county commissioners the electors can vote for. In Columbia County, the current election system is the result of an order of the United States District Court for the Middle District of Florida. In 1984, the Columbia County branch of the NAACP, along with Glenell Bowden, Glenell Presley, and Leonard O'Neill, filed suit against Columbia County alleging that at-large countywide voting violated the Voting Rights Act of 1965 as amended. The allegations of that complaint were that our at-large voting operated to exclude Black representation participation in the political process and minimized and canceled out Black voting strength within the county. The plaintiffs in that suit and the county voluntarily entered into a final judgment, which was approved by the federal court and therefore became an order of that court. According to the agreed upon order, the plaintiffs' rights were violated under the Voting Rights Act. The order enjoined and prohibited the county from employing countywide at-large elections in any matter which violates the Voting Rights Act. And furthermore, the court ordered and the parties agreed that the county must conduct all future elections in accordance with the election plan that was attached to the final judgment. That election plan provides that all future elections must proceed on a single district basis. In the language that was agreed upon at that time, the federal court determined that due to a series of factors, including a history of official racial discrimination within Columbia County and the state of Florida, certain socioeconomic conditions of Black citizens in Columbia County, and racially polarized voting in elections within the county, the at-large election system for the county commission has had the effect of denying Black citizens an equal opportunity to participate in the political process and elect candidates of their own choice in violation of plaintiffs' rights under the Voting Rights Act. This 1984 case has not been overturned, and I can find no evidence that it has been otherwise legally challenged. Therefore, the order remains in effect and should not be disregarded. It's important to note that pursuant to the agreed upon order, the plaintiffs were determined to be the quote-unquote prevailing party and were entitled to an award of attorney's fees and litigation expense costs against the defendants. The recommendation coming out of the operations subcommittee is that if the voters of Columbia County wish to change the current election system to allow for at-large countywide voting, the county should first seek and obtain approval from the federal court. Due to the findings in the standing order, any party seeking relief from the order will be required to show that at-large voting will comply with the Voting Rights Act of 1965 as amended, and prove that fact of such compliance to the court. Further, to increase the likelihood of success, it'll be necessary to demonstrate that the political climate of Columbia County today is not the same as the one that existed in 1984. Data and supporting documentation will need to be presented, establishing that the series of factors previously considered by the federal court are no longer prevalent in Columbia County. While it's true that the voters of Columbia County could pass a referendum amending the charter to provide for at-large voting, based on the language of the final judgment, it's highly probable that such an amendment would be subject to an immediate challenge. The county would be obligated to defend such a suit at a substantially higher probable cost. Should the plaintiff to the challenge prevail, the county may be obligated to pay the plaintiff's attorney's fees and costs, further increasing the county's expense. Proactively seeking relief from the 1984 final judgment would cost significantly less than defending a lawsuit brought to challenge a referendum or amendment that conflicts with the final judgment. The Operations Committee considered this matter at its May 11, 2020 meeting and voted to forward it on to the full CRC for its consideration. Since that time, I have received correspondence from Attorney Tommy Reeves, representing on behalf of Glenelle Bowden. Actually, there's several individuals: Aldonia Bowden, Glenelle Bowden, Tequila Bowden, Glenelle Presley, Maria Williams, Vanessa George, and Sylvester Warren, expressing support of the findings and recommendation, and also stating that if the county, if the CRC recommended and if the county were to move forward with at-large voting, that they would strenuously object to such a proposal, and such would be met by further legal challenges. I'm happy to answer any questions from the CRC board or the public.
With that being said, thank you, Ms. Hofschier. The public comment for this issue is now open. If you'll step up and identify yourself, please, and with your address and name.
Kyle Green, address is 4711 Northeast Gum Swamp Road, Lake City, Florida, 32055. Let the record show that back when at-large voting first came up, I took a firm stand against it. Over the period of time that we have gotten more information on this issue, I started to consider both sides of the question. I spoke with many people in the community to understand their views and opinions, and it even swayed my own perspective a little, even to the point where it could have seemed as though I was wishy-washy on the issue. I had come to the point where I said, let's leave it up to the voters and let them make a choice on what they want for Columbia County. That's until I spoke with one individual in particular. He mentioned to me a few things that I don't think any of us really consider, even myself when I initially spoke out against at-large voting. Columbia County has a total amount of 42,120 registered voters. 33,468 of those being white, 5,924 being black, 1,332 Hispanic, and 1,396 other. If we put these numbers into perspective, we should all be able to agree that at-large voting disenfranchises minority voters. Not only that, but people in each district should have full control over who represents them. How could voters in the south side of Columbia County understand the struggles that the north side of Columbia County is facing without actually living there? How will these individuals be held accountable? Now, I've heard the argument that commissioners work together and spend taxpayer dollars from everyone in the county as a whole. So everyone should be allowed to vote on every commissioner. But that's not a good reason to pass at-large voting. Just look at how things work locally in the state of Florida. Though our tax dollars are spent throughout the state of Florida, we don't get a say on every elected official in the state that is spending our money. This battle has already been fought and decided in federal court, and I can guarantee you that if it passes, it will once again see a federal courtroom. I cannot agree with burdening taxpayers the costs associated with a legal battle like this, and I will not stand for disenfranchising minority voters. District voting and representation has been working for many years, and I personally do not believe that we should change it now. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Dr. Philip Marbley. I currently reside in 1327 Northwest Scenic Lake Drive here in Lake City. I am the senior minister of the Northside Church of Christ, which is located on 378 Northwest Gilson Lane. Please record in the record this evening that I strongly disagree with the proposal to move from single district elections to at-large elections here in Columbia County. My family moved to this community back in 1950. Is someone?
I think it's somebody on the phone, Dr. Mobley. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. My family moved into this community back in the 1950s, where my father served as the principal of King's Welcome School. My siblings and I both attended segregated and integrated school systems here. My sisters and I graduated from Lake City Community College as part of our higher education pursuit. As you can see, my family, biological and spiritual, are invested in the success of this community. Not just the Black community, not just the white community, but the community at whole. Our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ stated in Mark 3:25, a house divided against itself, that house cannot stand. Even Abraham Lincoln gave an address, the house divided. Based on my professional training and experience as a Six Sigma Black Belt, I have supported and led many projects to conform and change processes for large and small companies. Changing any complex process is difficult. However, some changes are necessary, no matter how complex it may be. However, successful change and successful change agents know and realize that the most effective way to implement a change is communicate the advantages and disadvantages of any change to the stakeholders in order to get a buy-in. According to Chris Hayes of the NBC News, at-large block voting, also known as plurality at-large voting method, is the oldest trick in the book. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Ginsburg cited that this method preeminently creates a preeminent second generation a way of denying the equal opportunity for minority voters and candidates. Also, Congress has banned at-large voting for all federal elections, and most states have disbanded it. This at-large block voting method has caused many litigations in many communities. I ask you, commissioners, what changes, what real changes are you trying to achieve with this at-large voting? Do you realize the cost that this move, the schism that it will cause in this community? Let me tell you, the answer to the question is no. I can go on, but I realize my time is over. But I will caution Lake City, I will caution everyone, if we move this way, you're going to create a situation in this community that we do not want. And we need to change it, and we need to not allow this to go any further. As I close, I want to remind you what Apostle Paul wrote in Galatians, the 3rd chapter, verse 28. He said, there is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither bond nor free. There is neither male nor female, for we are all one in Christ Jesus. If we believe and we are a Christian community, why don't we act like it? And I encourage you, all commissioners, to vote with your Christian heart. Thank you, and may God bless you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Melvin Goggins. I live at 721 Southeast Camp Street here in Lake City. I am the pastor of Souls Harbor Church of God in Christ located on Northeast Lake Drive. I have been in Lake City with my family for over 40 years, 33 of which I served as an educator in the Columbia County school system. I've seen many transitions and many changes in Columbia County and Lake City. And I feel that with every one of you councilmen and councilwomen, you all have a common denominator, that is that you care about our community and you care about going forward. I simply wanted just to remind you that in '84, an attempt was made to address an injustice. Attempt made to address disenfranchisement of the people and the disadvantage of those with a lack of numbers. As I listened to the numbers from the gentleman who went first, it became obvious to me that with our numbers, we would never be in a situation where the numbers could override the majority that exists. On a given voting situation, if only 50% of that majority stood forward, that will equal more than 100% of the minorities coming together and making their presentation. As I said before, I believe that we all have a common denominator, that we care about our country, our county, we care about our family. I implore you to remember that the '84 ruling was to address issues and injustices. We ought to be continued at this moment to want to not undo what is right, but to further support and to go forward. With that in mind, I am confident that you will make the right decision by not letting this incident go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Gloria Bradley, 146 Northwest Flowers Place, Lake City, Florida, District 1. The 50th Amendment gave us the right to vote, yet through the actions of the Ku Klux Klan, black codes, and Jim Crow laws, the United States reneged. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act was instituted. The law was on the book. However, it did not remedy the problem of discrimination in voting. In 2013, our country started going backwards, mainly because Barack Obama was reelected as president. States started imposing new restrictions, limiting early voting and requiring photo ID. Well, we worked with these restrictions. Prior to 1984, some very concerned citizens had an epiphany in that in Columbia County, the government was levying all the taxes they wanted on us, and we had no representation. These individuals looked at the way things were organized and said, we will never have any representation, no chance. The cry has never been not to work with the governing system in this county, but rather have the governing system to work with us as blacks. The only way to accomplish this concept was to seek representation. With countywide voting, these citizens realized that a snowball would have a better chance in Tophet than blacks in Columbia County to have representation. These citizens fought diligently to win the case that would prove beneficial to the entire county. With fair representation, we have a say in the government and we work with the government. So now you have some citizens that would like to take rights and representation back as the citizenry did with the black codes and Jim Crow law. Yes, it is 2020 and things are different, as many are quick to say. It is different because we refuse to go back. We are prepared to enter this fight for the long haul. Many of us have jobs and we own property and we pay our taxes too. We demand to have representation on all levels of government, starting right here at home, Columbia County. We will not sit idle while some citizens with a contorted attitude go into their unscrupulous mode. We will not allow those who do not believe in humanitarian equality to display their dark side and plot devious schemes to put a political muzzle on us. This is home to us, and we love our home, and we will not allow it to be destroyed by those that do not care for all, but only for themselves. We are equal in the sight of God and according to our Constitution. Think about it carefully. Vote to keep district voting in place.
Thank you, man.
Good evening. My name is O.C. Bradley. I reside at 146 Northwest Flowers Place. And I stand before you tonight after hearing the reading tonight of the Civil Rights Act, questioning where is our heart and where is our Christian spirit. We live in a Bible belt, and I'm sure each and every one of us places God in our lives first. I know we do in my household. It bothers me that we live in a district, we have to stand in 2020 and fight for what we're fighting for today. I retired from the public school system in Columbia County School District as assistant superintendent for many years. I ran for superintendent at large, going door to door within the neighborhood, canvassing this community. I can tell you the climate has not changed. The climate has not changed. I was recognized as a top administrator in the state of Florida in 2007. The person who won the award before me was the Lieutenant Governor Brogan the year before. Coming back, being very proud in this community, but going door to door, canvassing this community because of the color of my skin made a difference. Now you can say yes or no to that, that's your personal opinion, but I know in my heart, because when I work with children, I don't see color, or when I work with people, I don't see color, I see the heart and the character. So I'm begging you tonight, because I'm sure that you were placed in this board because you gave a personality that should be sensitive to this community. I hope that you're sensitive to this community by voting the at-large down. I know for a fact, without that, there will be no representation. And I sit down, take my seat by saying, to God be the glory, because he will be victorious.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioners who are on the phone, if you could please mute your microphone. We're getting a lot of feedback in the auditorium. Thank you.
I am Blondell Rodriguez Johnson, born and raised here in Columbia County. You look at me and say, wow, Rodriguez. How many black people do you know named Rodriguez? But we do exist here. However, when I grew up before Columbia County became fully integrated. When I graduated from Columbia High in 1970, there were 12 minority students. Do you want to know how it feels to be punched and to be spit on simply because you're there to get an education? With you going back to that, that's the way that I feel right now. I feel that in the atmosphere. And we have come so far, yet I feel that. I don't want my children, my grandchildren to experience that. But that's exactly what I sense in doing this. With the other minority students that were there when I was there, where are they now? Do you know they had felt so much hatred until they didn't live here, they didn't remain here in Columbia County. They left. And that's what's sad. They got an education and they moved. Is that what you want to happen to the others that are here? It's not just a little small trinket of an information. Looking at families, people with education that have the ability to make our community bigger and better, to grow and experience. My children I'm gonna tell you what I did with mine. I wanted my children to go to college. They didn't want to. But they went to the military. They are back in Columbia County. I want my grandchildren to remain here. I don't want them to experience other kinds of segregated and racism, that they will move someplace else in the United States, because they've been all over the world. Do you know what it took for me to get them to move back to Columbia County? You may not feel that within the children in your household, but it's difficult to get them to move back, because first of all, we don't pay the kind of wages that they made where they were. The experiences here aren't exactly the same either. But they come back and live here because a family is here. Think about what these kinds of things may do. They have education, they have fantastic jobs. My daughter's working on a doctorate degree now. My son works for a fantastic company. Fantastic. But think about what you're thinking about doing. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sylvester Warren, 832 Northeast Richardson Terrace. I would like to begin by saying that this issue of at-large voting is 100% about race and other factors too. But to somehow think we are not going to call an ace an ace and a spade because some people seem to be uncomfortable and defensive about a race subject some have brought up and reopened the door to. Remember, the courts and blacks have done and been silent on this issue since 1984. I personally, along with many others, both black and white, find it disappointing and distasteful that in 2020, we are even having this discussion or going down this particular road. Shame on those who continue to attempt to divide us along racial lines in this town by trying to reinstate at-large voting. This attempt is despicable and immoral. If we as the human race can't step back and take a look at what has gone on and still goes on in this country and town toward blacks for no reason other than the color of our skin, in which we had no hand or no role in deciding that skin color. And we need to stop it. It will only undo the hard work and effort that has been made on race relations and demonstrate it was mere a dog and pony show. I think Ahmaud, an unarmed black man, and the delayed justice and senseless murder of him while jogging is a great example. I think Breonna Taylor and the Kenneth Smith case, in which Louisville, Kentucky law enforcement executed a search warrant on the wrong house without announcing themselves as law enforcement, without realizing they were already had the suspect in custody hours prior to then find 30 rounds into the house of this couple, killing Miss Taylor and arresting Miss Smith, who thought he was defending his home from burglars. The same day this black guy tries to defend his house from suspects that he feels is being burglarized, that his house is being burglarized, he is arrested immediately, even though he has 911 recordings to back him up and support him 100%. And charges against him still have not been dropped. However, in the case of Ahmaud shooters who are white, goes unarrested for months. What is the correlation here? Just as we, as blacks, are tired of the senseless and racial killings of our black males by white law enforcement and white vigilantes, in which too often justice goes fail in those situations. And we should be outraged. Likewise, as blacks, we are tired of defending our voting rights, our ability to elect representation of our choice, and our vote to count in a meaningful way. I'm referring to the discussions and attempts in 2002, in 2006, in 2012, and now in 2020 to return to at-large voting. And again, we all should be outraged. This is not the same reason we fought, or is this not the same reason we fought and broke away from Great Britain? Because of a minority group of people who said taxation without representation was unfair in the British Parliament. If we fast forward to now, and somehow some can't understand or empathize with the same position that blacks are in as a minority group, and what we advocating for here, in addition to defy a federal court order, ignore legal counsel, and have some on the CRC to make childish statements such as "let's bring it on, let's go," is greatly disturbing and unwise. The idea to force taxpayers such as myself and many others, both black and white, to foot a legal bill about an issue we disagree with is beyond wrong. That said, it would be amiss of me not to mention the economic side of this. To attempt to defy a court order by the full CRC would cost taxpayers millions of dollars possibly. I will continue to say if the county have money to throw away on nonsense ideas such as at-large voting, it will serve taxpayers better to have that money spent on infrastructures and bringing better industrial jobs to Columbia County. Jobs that can afford people the decent houses and the ability to send their kids to college and also to trade school. I will submit we need better paying jobs, real justice, real equality around here. In closing, I will say this. This issue is 100% about race when you are black, although it seems to be hard for many of my white counterparts to understand that. It is 100% about voting rights when you are the minority group who has to deal with your ancestors being murdered for this basic right, and at every turn, obstacles being put in your way to prevent your vote from counting in a significant manner. It is 100% about true and fair representation for all, which must include blacks. It is 100% about wasting taxpayer dollars. It is 100% about disregarding legal advice. It is 100% about equality. It is my sincere hope that many decent folks on the CRC board, who I see, will not become defensive about my statements I've made about the facts of the matter as I see them as a black man in this country and town. But more so, put yourself in our shoes and imagine that this was a majority black town and we were pushing for at-large voting to drown your ability to choose representation that is ideal to you and for you. Hopeful, more conscious will prevail this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to remind everybody that by our bylaws, there's a 3-minute limit. I know everybody's got a lot to say, but please be respectful of that, because when you overgo your 3 minutes, you're eating upon somebody else's other time. Next person, please.
Vanessa George, 930 Northeast Joconi Terrace. No other voting method has been subject to more litigation for its discriminatory impact on local elections than at-large voting. And not one district have reverted back to this discriminatory practice. Why are we even, my question is why? Why are we even discussing going back to a system that was used after the Civil War in local jurisdictions across the South to ensure a white-only government? Why in 2020 are we trying to revert back to a voting system that Congress banned in all federal elections? Supreme Court Justice Ginsburg cited at-large voting along with racial gerrymandering as a preeminent second generational way to deny equal opportunity for minority voters and candidates. So with the evidence that at-large voting discriminates and local federal rulings to do away with at-large voting, my question is why? And just know that anything you say in favor of large voting is basically denying the right is basically defending the right to disenfranchise the minority population, whether it be by race, sex, or political party. This is a defining moment in how you vote. It will define who you are. Are you the citizen to honor the laws of the land, including the federal lawsuit that's on the books now? Are you the same type of American that claimed that you were such a patriot that violated the federal law, Brown versus the Board of Education, and screamed at a six-year little girl, Ruby Bridges, as she attempted to go to school? Or are you the same type of American patriot who is like the angry mob that harassed, spit, and threw things at teenagers, better known as the Little Rock Nine? Or could you be the same type of American, black or white, that walked peaceful in protest with Dr. King? Perhaps you can identify with Diane Nash or, James Beck, that attempted to integrate the U.S. highways along with their black counterparts. What will your legacy be? What will you be remembered for? That you voted for a discriminatory practice at large voting? Or would your legacy state and be cited that you stood for justice and equality for all? What is your legacy?
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Sherry Justin. I wasn't planning on speaking this evening. I just wanted to come and listen. I'm a transferee into Lake City because I have family here. And I really don't want to speak about the racial because, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at the numbers, you're going to lose. The black churches will rise. I guess I'll be with them because currently I've been attending Cleopatra Steele's church. But I don't even want to get into the race part because I don't think like that. So I don't want to think about the race part, but numbers-wise, you'll lose. Go right ahead. What I want to talk about is, in 1984, things have changed. I live at Eastside Village. It's a community of 260 homes for the elderly. We love seeing our politicians come out and see us. You serve us food, we will vote for you. But if you're going to live on the other side of town, and you who are in my age group, I'm 70, you're not going to vote for them. I don't know what other developments, since I'm newly here, have occurred where you have different pockets. You only want to talk about voters. You talk about voters, for your numbers, you'll lose. But I don't know what other is here. I know that I think I don't represent. I live in the largest elderly community where we want the peace and safety and quiet and the lovely, great place of Lake City and people who are neighborly regardless of color. I'm concerned because I think this is a big business thing. How much time? I attended a commissioner's meeting when I was here. I periodically go. And there was a gentleman there. His first name is Daniel. I won't give you his last name. And he was trying to get something through in a neighborhood. And this was his second time around because he can only come up apparently every 3 years. And they were concerned about enjoying their residential property because of the noise. He couldn't guarantee what he would put in that area. And because, yes, I've seen it, thank you. And because the residents of that community, I think there was like 50 people just from that community, because he wouldn't give them guarantees, it got overvoted again against him. I expect to see him back in 2 years. But because they felt they had that individual representation from that area, and it was their neighbor they were talking to who was sitting up here, they got it through. And I can remember thinking, wow, they really listened to the individual people of their area. I don't want to be represented by somebody who lives on the west side of town making decisions about the east side of town for me. I don't want to do it. And I'm going to ask you, would you want that in your home? I think it's an American right. This is our basic foundational righting area in our town, is the way it's set up now. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I am Jacqueline Dupree. I reside at 255 Southwest Stanley Court, Lake City, Florida. And I have the esteemed privilege of pastoring the New Mount Pisgah AME Church in Lake City. I have been here less than 3 years as a resident of Lake City, Columbia County, but I am a resident of Lake City, Columbia County. And I represent and serve people who have been lifelong members, residents of Lake City and New Mount Pisgah. I stand here on their behalf. I'm an itinerant minister, which means I can be called by my bishop tonight and told to go to Tutwiler, Mississippi, and I got to go. That's a made-up place. But today I'm here, and I represent them as well as my own self in saying that I believe at-large voting is incredulously disrespectful to the African-American community. We as a people have had to fight for so long, for so much, for us, where it has been given to us. And I don't want to make it a race thing either, but the truth is just the truth, and it is what it is. We have to stand up for what is right. And what is right is at-large voting is wrong. Let us have a conscience. Let us think about persons outside of ourselves. Let us think about the generations to come behind us and those who fought and bled and died before us, and do what's right for the city of Lake City, Columbia County. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else?
Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioner.
I'm Ron Williams from Winfield, Florida. Mr. Chairman, I might take just a little more than 3 minutes.
Just a little.
I know the history. Back in 1976, and most people don't realize this, in 1976, I woke up one morning and I said, I believe I can make a difference in Columbia County. And I went qualified to run for county commission. 1976. It was 7 people in that race. I'm honest black. Well, during the primary, I ended up with 48% of the vote. It's countywide. On the runoff, I lost by 6 points. I felt so heartbroken because I knew in my mind I was the best qualified person in that race. And I know that the only reason I wasn't elected because of the color of my skin. I knew that. I was so heartbroken until 1980, I did not seek to run again. The county commissioner that ran got in some trouble, and I did not even apply for the position of county commissioner. All I know, I was on the job one day, and I received a telephone call and said, Ron, you need to go to the telephone and call this number. So I did. The first thing when you say Tallahassee calls, you wonder what's going on. And it was Governor Graham's office and say, Commissioner Williams, the governor, Ron Williams, Mr. Williams, the governor have appointed you county commissioner of District 1 for the next term, for the next 2 years. I was elated, I was happy, and I welcomed the challenge. Well, 1982, I had to run for the 2 years remaining in the 4-year term. I believe at that time there were 6 or 7 with me in that race. And I said, well, here it goes again. But sometime the Supreme Master have a whole card for me. I won by over 52% of the vote countywide in 1982. So here goes my scenario. when the NAACP, along with Glenn L. Bowden, Glenn L. Presley, and Leonard O'Neill, was suing the school board to go to single-member districts, they combined the Board of County Commissioners in that suit. We, Aldine Figo, Wayne Hine, Dupree Modi, Jim Martin, myself said, we are not going to fight it. This is what it needs. We are not going to fight this lawsuit. We had to go ourselves to the federal courts in Jacksonville. The NAACP lawyer, along with their witnesses, came up and they gave their reason why it should be district court. And somewhere during that trial, the judge called a halt to all the testimony and said, I understand that you all say a black man cannot be elected countywide in Columbia County. Mr. Bowden and his representative and the lawyer said, that's right, Your Honor. He said, unless my hearing is off and I don't see from my eyes, that gentleman sitting right there is black. Their response to the judge was, Judge, we believe this. There's only 2 black people in Columbia County could be elected countywide. That's Ron Williams and Alphonse Lee. The judge took that thought, and when he ruled that we go to single-member district. Now, when single-member district was created, District 1 had about 65% black. It wasn't registered voters, it was black, census black, from kids to grandpa. Over the years, as the young blacks get educated and move out, they move out of the poor city. And the old folks die. So that number has come down to where we are the minorities in District 1 now. We are the minorities in District 1 now. So if we change back to at-large voting, I do not believe, and I'm honest for saying this, I do not believe that Ron Williams today could get elected county commissioner in District 1 countywide. I don't believe it. Back in the old days, you knew who were presidents, because they were man enough to stand in your face and say what they didn't like. These days and times, they're behind the curtain. They're behind the curtain with it.
Keep it ordered now, please.
It makes a difference. I know all of you all up here, except for Mr. Lane. I know all of you guys, and young lady. But what's fair is fair. We have to struggle to be part of this community. You can all cheer when we run into football and shoot the basketball. Them the homeboys from Lake City, Columbia County. But where we need voice, Miss Mary Smith only won by 38 votes in District 1 in the school board. Leonard O'Neill did not win in District 1 for school board. That should tell you something right there.
Johnson. Leonard Johnson.
I'm sorry, Leonard Johnson, I'm sorry. But you got the point though. It's a struggle. It's a struggle every day. Let me tell you a little bit about what I was going to do. When I got to be county commissioner, I got death threats. Right here in Columbia County, good old Columbia County. My family got death threats. And they didn't stop until Bob Graham sent the state police here in Columbia County. Right here in this auditorium, I have been called a nigger, a coon, and a booger in the woodpile. Right here in this auditorium, right here. Right here. And we're asking to go elect a black man countywide in Columbia County. That's, I'll say it again, it's what the bull leave in the field when they get too great. It's just as simple as that. And I want y'all to look at this and touch your heart. Touch your heart. There's one thing that we learn when we go to classes for being a county commissioner. They always tell you there's one man can save you money and keep you out of trouble. That's your attorney. If you listen to your attorney, you're not going to get in trouble and it's not going to cost you a bunch of money. But I guarantee you, if we go the route that some of them want to go, it's gonna cost Columbia County money. It's gonna cost Columbia County jobs for businesses who want to locate in a community where we got a race issue, want to bring their company to Columbia County when we can't even have a policy where we can elect one black man. We ain't talking about four. We're talking about just one black man. The possibility of one black man to step on the Board of County Commission. That's what it's about. And I want to leave you with this. One of the greatest presidents ever been in this United States of America said this. He said, 407 years ago, our father brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. If we're all created equal, we need a district, we need a tribe to elect a black man. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Ronald W. Williams II, 352 Northwest Belvin Way, Lake City, Florida. Over the years, I spent over 20-some years in the Marine Corps, had a great career, had a great fun. In the summer of 2000, I coined a phrase to my Marines while teaching a hip pocket class. And I coined that phrase, it was called leadership is everything and talk is cheap. And I told them that leadership requires you to do the right thing in the midst of problems and trouble. And I've held on to that because of everything that my father just said. It's strange for a little boy to hear their father crying at night, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and answering the phone and being called a little nigga, and being riding in a car with my mom as we're being run off the road by white folk all about this county. As I lived through that, I developed a mental toughness that I fear nothing. I fear no man, I fear no situation. And I believe that in my faith, that in that time when I was small, that God brought me out of that and gave me to believe in something that was greater than what I see. And I've held on to that belief all of my life. That got me to right here, right now. Now, I was here months ago and I asked a question. Why did you hire this lawyer? And none of you could give me an answer. I stayed up here for a long time, even past my time. Your leadership should have stopped it then. We got on the phone. Then we tried to go to limiting commissioners an opportunity, to vote and to be voted. That failed. You should have stopped it then. At-large voting came back on the platform again. And even in the midst of the subcommittee's meeting, we were called childish for even bringing up this matter of trying to stop it. And at one point, I thought that, Mr. O'Neill, Mr. Chairman, that you should have stopped it then. But you didn't do that. See, leadership requires a person to do something beyond a situation. See, you guys got to make a decision tonight. Do the right thing. Vote this out. And let's move on with Columbia County. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Aiken, and I live at 1308 Southwest Sydney Glen.
You know, as a child, I would talk, if a man don't stand for something, they will fall for anything. And to my peoples in this building, it's time for us to stop falling. It's time for us to take this mother off our mind, off our face that they have tried to put on us too long. It's time for us to stand up and fight for right. If we come together with one powerful fist, we can make a big empire. But with all of us being separated, we can't do nothing. But this is just too wrong. I can't believe in my 57 year alive, we have to go back to fight something that our ancestors had already covered for us a long time ago. What would be next? Will we be spraying with water hose? Will you take away our right to vote 100%? It just don't make any sense that we today having to go through this all over again. But I say to us, because as I look on the panel, you all already have the upper hand. Just look around you people. My people, just look on the panel. They already have the upper hand against us. It's time for us to stand up and take a stand and stop letting them put this muzzle over our mouths to silence us.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
My name is Cedric Cray. Reside at 411 Southeast Evergreen Drive. 39 years old. I've lived in Lake City for 35 of those years. That doesn't seem like a whole lot of time to a lot of people in this room because I understand there are people that are older than me. They're 39 years old. I can still remember right out there on Lake Jeffrey Road where I grew up at, passing by a house in a Klan in the front yard. 7 years old. I go home, my parents tell me to stay inside. What does that have to do with anything right now? At-large voting is clearly racist, just like the Klan is. There's no doubt about that. It's in the history books. Everybody, for the most part, can see that and agree upon that. But my question would have to be this. Who stands to benefit from at-large voting? It's obviously not the community that's raising hell right now. So who stands to benefit from it? Deborah just said something that a lot of people should be able to focus on in this room and see. Ray Charles can see, and he's dead and blind. There's nobody up there right now that can represent anybody on the west side of town. But yet, you have people who will sit up there and want to make it so that people on that side of town cannot get the proper representation that they need. But yet, I've been reading Facebook, and I understand we have a lot of Facebook politicians on here. No one has asked the question, who stands to benefit from it? And I haven't seen anybody on a certain Facebook post answer that question. I'll tell you who's going to benefit from it. Right now, if you go to at-large voting, it won't be the black people. It won't be the Mexicans, not the Asians. It's going to be the white people. And before anybody stands up and says, well, there goes another black man who has a problem against white people, let me say this. My wife looked like a box of baby powders. My kids half white. My best man at my wedding was a white man. So nobody can't say that I'm just up here raising sand because I'm black and I'm angry. I'm angry because you are trying to do away with a system that has worked over the years that everybody can agree upon works. If it's not broke, don't fix it. It's real simple. Some things you don't go for and other things you don't go against. That's with anything in life. And I understand that some people may not be old enough to realize that, but it's a fact. What I'm asking is this. Do not pass the at-large voting rule. It's plain and simple. It should be a dead horse when it's time. But here it is, 2020, we're still going for it. I'm not going to give these 22 seconds to somebody else, but please take this and throw it in the garbage because that's exactly where it belongs. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Carlos Johnson.
reside at 1033 Northwest Kimberly Road. I stand before the citizens of Columbia County on the panel, not with some great eloquent speech written out, so you have to bear with me a little bit. I'm not coming up here to speak from statistics, I'm coming to speak from experience. I grew up here in Lake City, Florida, and my mother spoke earlier. I was one of those children that left Lake City, that truly did not want to come back to Lake City. Reason being, I came through the Columbia County school system. I can't really tell you much about what happened in 1984 because I'm a little too young. I was old enough to be there, but not old enough to remember the experiences and the climate of the time. But what I can tell you is by the time I made it to the high school in the 90s, the climate was off. I took honors classes, and I remember having honors teachers as I'm walking in the classroom look at me as if I didn't belong. The numbers were disproportionate according to race by the honors classes. And it was not because there were not students that were capable of the honors classes that were African American. It was because nobody ever told them to do it. The teachers didn't encourage them to take those classes. Now, the point I'm making is it's the same situation. I had no representation in the honors classes. When I left Lake City going to college, I attended Florida A&M University. I had opportunities to attend other universities, but the climate just didn't feel right leaving from here. That experience soured me so until I wanted to be surrounded by people like me because I had no representation. Now here we are, we're talking about expanding the same type of environment instead of moving forward. I came back to Lake City, I had a job paying well outside of Lake City. I moved back to Lake City because this is where I grew up. This is where my mother and father were, and they were getting older. This is where I wanted to be close to my mother and father. But at the same time, now here we are closing doors and opening old wounds that make me want to leave Lake City again. I ask you and I implore from you not to tear off the scale. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Good evening. My name is Reverend Dr. Pamela Green, and just moved to your city last July. I'm a pastor in the United Methodist Church at Trinity and New Hope, and have really enjoyed my stay here in Lake City. One of the things I so enjoy about being a pastor in the United Methodist Church is that one of our main tenets is fighting for justice. We do not sit back when we see injustice. We don't sit back and say nothing when we see that things are occurring that allow one of our people, one of our neighbors, one of God's children to be disenfranchised. We don't sit back and we don't stand for it. I love being a United Methodist for that reason. It is my prayer tonight that you all will stand for justice too. That you all will not allow what you see happening. And just as the gentleman said, Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles, who is dead, can see, justice is not happening here. And it is my prayer that you reach down into your hearts and allow your heart to speak and recognize that what is happening here is not filled with justice. And it is certainly something that God would not smile about. It is in your hands. That's so amazing. As leaders, that it is in your hands to make a decision that can move Lake City forward with the rest of the country, or it can move Lake City back. How many years, gentlemen, could this move Lake City back for all of the justices that have been fought for, people have died for, and grandmothers have gotten on their knees and prayed for? It's in your hands, gentlemen. I pray to God you do the right thing.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Any other public comment on this matter?
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm Leonard Johnson of 174 Northwest Towerview Glen. I waited deliberately to see not a single person came up and spoke in favor of this at-large voting, not a single person. And if you are sitting as a representative of people, the people have spoken. When the people speak, we all are obligated as officials to honor their wishes. What I would like to point out a couple of things. When Ron Wadens was speaking, and he was speaking of me, having been on the school board for 3 years and running for a 4th term, I had not had a white opponent in the 3 years I was elected to the school board. But when I did get a white opponent, I lost the election. When I came to the school board to say goodbye to them, the school board members, including the superintendent, spoke so highly of me that people in the audience, because I turned around and looked, was wondering why in the world is it that you're not still on the school board? They talked of my intelligence, about my love for children, and the work and the representation that I took to Tallahassee as a member of this community, having been asked to speak at a state school board convention, but I lost the election. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why I did. Now, what I would like to appeal to you all who are sitting here, who's going to be voting tonight, is this idea of constitution. Most of us that live in this community would consider ourselves conservative. If you are conservative, you must be a constitutionalist. And if you are a constitutionalist, you must obey the law. And the law has been established, and the law has been set by a district federal court. Listen to me, gentlemen. As a civic teacher, I know that a federal district court is not far removed from the United States Supreme Court. So why in the world would we overturn a law that has already been established, being law-abiding citizens, because all of us are obligated to honor the rule of law. If you're not going to honor the rule of law, you cannot be a constitutionalist. You cannot be a person who says, I obey the law and I honor the law. We must all do that at all times. We cannot cherry pick. If it has been set in law, we are all obligated to honor that. And I'm going to assume and think with all of my heart that every one of you that's sitting here and every one of you that will be voting on this issue will do it out of the sense of the rule of law, because you indeed would be a constitutionalist. Now, I want to say this. The lawyer spoke that we hired to address this issue. And if you are going to overturn this, you need to overturn the law before you even ask this community to consider at-large voting. Because if you don't, you're going to usurp the law. And what gives you the right to do that as a conservative constitutionalist? Because I truly believe if there was some other matter before this board, such as gun rights, there's no way in the world that this issue would even be discussed tonight, because it would not have made it this far. Listen, we're going to be law-abiding citizens of this country, every one of us. And it doesn't matter. See, I don't believe that you're going to sit there because you're white and vote for this matter. You have to sit there and vote because you're a person who believes in the Constitution and the law of this land, and that you firmly believe in the principle of the rule of law. So let's all take that in mind and think that way, so that everybody in this community can be respected regardless of the color of their skin. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else for public comment?
Material issues that we have. I do not understand the nature of them. In 1984, I found myself in the cordial position for once agreeing about get to the wasn't just a black, but it was a very black issue because there was some very good black people in the community. That so-called alone with the very nature of what's proposed is because I'm somewhat disappointed that I didn't get to hear the logic from anybody as to why. I figured that would come first and then the response. It didn't happen. Using the logic of that was both then we can come to see how far these people will go with that methodology. Representative government, the people said, very eloquent. I went along with it, from the doctor, the minister, and from several other people. I think that must be an issue that divides us. Gotta be the right passion, the right way. You don't get this many people to come out for any issue. I'm very, very happy. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else for public comment? Not seeing anybody step up. This portion, public comment is now closed on this issue. Excuse me.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could just read the public comments that were received via email. I'll ask for everyone's patience. I have over 100, but I did promise and through the meeting notice that these will be read into the record. The first public comment is from Jawan Burgess. I, Jawan Burgess, a lifelong resident, taxpayer, contributor, oppose at-large voting and tax dollars being spent on this issue. Mr. Kendrick Jerry says, I oppose at-large voting. The attorney who was mentioned earlier, Mr. Tommy Reeves, I did speak with him. He requested his letter be read into public comment. I'll do that now. Assuming my computer is cooperating. This letter was addressed to Ms. Hoshihara and myself regarding proposal for charter amendment to provide for at-large elections for members of the Board of County Commissioners of Columbia County, Florida. This firm represents Aldania Bowden. If I mispronounce the name, please forgive me. Glenelle Bowden, Akila Bowden, Glenelle Presley, Kamaria M. Williams, Vanessa George, and Sylvester Warren III. Each of the above listed persons is an African-American voter who is registered to vote in Columbia County, Florida. It is our understanding that the County Charter Review Commission, the CRC, is presently considering proposing an amendment to the county charter which would reinstate at-large voting for the members of the Board of County Commissioners for the county. Please be advised that our clients strenuously object to any such proposal because, one, such a system is presently barred by federal court order and cannot be changed without a subsequent order from the federal court approving such change. And two, should the court reconsider the matter, it would find that a system of at-large voting in the county would not comply with either the spirit or letter of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I have been provided a copy of the May 11th, 2020 report from the Operations Committee regarding report of committee findings, single member versus at-large voting. We agree with the findings and recommendations set out in the report as far as it provides that the current system of single member districts was set up and approved by the federal court in Columbia County NAACP versus Columbia County, Florida, civil action number 84-609-CIV-J-12, U.S. District Court, Middle District of Florida, and that the use of single member districts cannot be changed without court approval. We particularly agree with the recommendation that if the county wishes to consider a return to at-large voting, that it should seek approval from the court first. However, our clients go further than the above report and affirmatively assert they do not believe that a system of at-large voting can be instituted in the county in any way that complies with the spirit or letter of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. As stated in the report and the federal court's order, the court determined, quote, that due to a series of factors, including a history of official racial discrimination within Columbia County and the state of Florida, certain socioeconomic conditions of Black citizens of Columbia County, and racially polarized voting and elections within the county, the at-large election system for the county commission has had the effect of denying Black citizens an equal opportunity to participate in the political process and elect candidates of their choice in violation of plaintiffs' rights under the Voting Rights Act. Our clients believe that reinstituting at-large voting would again have the effect of denying Black citizens an equal opportunity to participate in the political process and elect candidates of their own choice in violation of the plaintiffs' rights under the Voting Rights Act. Our clients stand ready to do whatever is lawfully allowed and necessary to keep the present court order in effect and resist any attempt to return to at-large voting. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, Mr. George Reeves on behalf of his law firm. They're not all that long. Let's see. The next comment is from Ms. Amy Dobson, who states that she is opposed to at-large voting and tax dollars being spent on this issue. She expresses her thanks to the CRC. Ms. Arlene Dix, Sharon Griffin, Marion Griffin, and Nicole Bryant all are active registered voters who are against the county voting for the county commissioners through an at-large process. DeKayla Bradley states that as a taxpayer and upstanding citizen of the community, she would like it noted that she greatly opposes at-large voting as well as tax dollars being spent on the issue. Benny Harper states that she opposes at-large voting. Marjarian Lewis states that she is a resident of Columbia County and writes to voice her strong opposition to at-large voting and for the tax dollars being spent on the issue. Ashley Warren states that she opposes at-large voting and tax dollars being spent on this issue. DeCarlo Scipio says that he opposes at-large voting and tax dollars being spent on this issue. Rosa Jerry Gross opposes at-large county voting. Celine Warren states that she would like to oppose the issue of at-large voting and the use of tax dollars. She also expresses her gratitude to Ms. George emailed to reiterate her opposition to at-large voting. She also considers it a waste of tax dollars money concerning this issue and invites contact if we need any clarification. Ms. Joanne George states that she opposes at-large voting and she opposes wasting tax dollars on this issue. Salathia Williams states that she opposes at-large voting and tax dollars being spent on this issue. Just so you know, I'm not summarizing, I'm actually reading what was read. Pinky Timmons states that there's opposition to at-large voting and to tax dollars being spent on it. Erica Mayo says that it has been brought to her attention that Columbia County is considering taking taxpayers' dollars and using it towards changing the voting structure. She opposes at-large voting and does not want her tax dollars spent on this issue. She expresses her gratitude to the commission. Shaiwong Whitaker, states that she's a resident of the county and she opposes at-large voting. Deidre Rosen, states that she opposes at-large voting at the taxpayer's expense. Michael Henderson states that he does not agree with the new tax plan. I have a Kay Dunmore that states that they are opposed to at-large voting and tax dollars being spent towards this issue. Vicki Jones states that she is a resident of Columbia County and she opposes this decision as it is not fair to her community. Julius Moreland says that please consider my concern of at-large voting in Columbia County and our tax dollars being spent on this matter. I oppose at-large voting in Columbia County and our tax dollars being spent on this matter. I would like to further discuss at-large voting. I would be happy to schedule a meeting with you, and they provided their phone number. Kendria Jones states that she opposes. John Fennell says that he is a Columbia County resident and he opposes at-large voting and his tax dollars being spent on this issue. Mr. A.D. Farmer says that he opposes at-large voting and spending tax dollars on this issue. Grover Lewis says that he prays all is well with us during the pandemic. However, he's here to express himself about at-large voting here in Columbia County. He's totally against it for many reasons. The main reason is it is not fair to all citizens, especially minorities. He asked that this matter be excused from voting in the county. Tamar Jernigan states that opposition to at-large voting and tax dollars being spent on this issue. Jennifer Harris states that she's a resident of Columbia County, Lake City, and opposes at-large voting and tax dollars being spent on this issue. Key Clark states that states opposition to voting at large and tax dollars being spent on this issue. Linda Taylor opposes at-large voting and using tax dollars on this issue. Sean Baker opposes at-large voting and use of tax dollars associated with this situation. Onai Allen says that she is not in favor of this issue with respect to at-large voting. Esther Leader Taylor Parker says that she is opposed to at-large voting and tax dollars being spent on this issue. Reginald Mullins opposes at-large voting and tax dollars being spent on this issue and expresses gratitude to the board. Yakendra Richardson is opposed to at-large voting and tax dollars being spent on this issue. I apologize, I have LG as opposed to at-large voting and spending tax dollars on this issue. There was no other name. Kiona O'Neill says, to whom it may concern, I've lived in Columbia County most of my life, only leaving to obtain my bachelor's and master's degrees, and then I returned. I have owned a home here for 14 years. I am opposed to at-large voting and any of our tax dollars being used on this issue. Our voting system is working just fine as is. I appreciate your time and consideration. I apologize, last name is O'Neill Givens, hyphenated. Joyce Griffin states that she is opposed to at-large voting of this district and I reside in, and the unnecessary spending of my tax dollars. Thanks for reading about how I feel about the situation. Taquita Lee states, my name is Taquita Lee and I'm a tax-paying longtime resident of Lake City, Florida. I oppose at-large voting and tax dollars being spent on this issue. Sheree Ford writes, to whom it may concern, I have been a voting citizen in Lake City for the past 20 years. At-large voting in Lake City is a vice in combination to dampen the voice of members of a district that may be in a majority from having a strong enough voice of support for the candidates of choice. Please do not allow for at-large voting in Lake City. The people need to feel like they are heard and represented by a person who has their same concerns at large is wrong for the people of color in our city. Thank you. Celeste Belvin Bradley. As a registered voter, I would like to express my sincere concern to the issue of at-large voting. I feel that at this time, this would be very detrimental to the citizens of Lake City and Columbia County. Our young people need to have representation in our local offices and positions of their choosing, an advocate to speak on their behalf through, though some are not eligible to vote, they want someone who knows their rhetoric. Also, our senior voters want to be assured that their opinions are heard, that their hard-earned tax dollars are spent towards their best interests in all neighborhoods. We're living in uncertain times and our tomorrows are no longer promised. I pray that the at-large strategy falls void. Please consider this as my opposition to the voting procedure. I pray that very deep, caring, and sincere consideration is put into this monumental decision. Temez Ruiz states that I oppose against the large voting and tax dollars being spent with our money. Christopher Turner, Columbia County Charter Review Commission. I'm Sergeant First Class Christopher J. Turner, and I'm a native of Columbia County and Lake City, Florida. I speak as a private citizen and not in my military capacity. I currently serve this great nation by being a proud soldier in the United States Army for 13 years today. My entire family resides in Columbia County, and I visit home as often as I can and try to be in tune with what affects my family and home. With saying that, I've followed the issue of reintroducing at-large voting for Columbia County for some time now. And it's clear after reading the findings that large voting doesn't work, and it is clearly a violation of federal laws. Part of the reason why I serve this country is to protect the rights of all citizens and their freedoms that come with those rights. Voting is a right among that list that I fight for and sacrifice my life every day. It's especially precious because at one point in our history as a country, the right to vote and have adequate representation was robbed from a certain community, which is the African American community. The at-large voting system that was proven to be direct violation of the federal laws and the voting acts will be a step backwards for this county. Representation is everything. And with the current demographics of Columbia County being 78% white or Caucasian and only 18% Black or African American, at-large voting doesn't represent all of the communities adequately in the county. District voting should be sustained in our communities. It's the way we currently vote locally, but not only locally, but at every level of our government. That very reason is representation. Only members of certain communities can truly represent the interests of the people who they represent. We as a community, we do not, nor will we ever support at-large voting for the county commission. It's a violation and doesn't represent everyone in keeping in line with our nation and our rights as citizens and the spirit and drive we have as a nation. We want to guarantee that every individual, every community, every district, and every state is represented well. This is why I serve and fight for this great country. Thank you, Christopher Turner. Edward Turner states that as a taxpayer and law-abiding citizen of Great Columbia County in the state of Florida, I'm concerned about the meeting agenda on Monday. Columbia County needs to stay with single-member district voting. Thank you for your service. Okay. Terrence Givens writes, I pray that this correspondence via email meets you in peace, joy, and the love of God. My name is Terrence Givens, a resident and registered voter. I happily reside in Lake City, Columbia County for the past 6 years. I love this place. I'm a former lifetime Baker County resident who commuted to work first as a teenager at Combs Funeral Home of Lake City, in which I'm still a funeral attendant a member of Miracle Tabernacle Church in Lake City, and volunteer at the Swanee Valley Rescue Mission that feeds the hungry daily here in Lake City. I'm grateful to be in the gateway to Florida, Lake City, Columbia County. The economic strides that this place has made in the past 20 years is amazing. Growth has been tremendous. As a young child, I've always admired the Lake City, Columbia County area. Since 1987, I've had the privilege of riding throughout the county with the Combs Funeral Home staff on various funeral services week in and week out. I would go back to Sanderson, Baker County, a little disappointed because Baker County was not as advanced or diverse in the county or city government as Lake City, Columbia County. The single-member district voting is one of the reasons for that and must remain in place for Columbia County. One example, human nature. Truth be told, people support mostly who looks like them, experience things as them, and or has been in a similar situation or position as them. We need and must keep diversity or we'll be heading backwards towards separation, segregation, rather unification of all people. Diversity is necessary and key. We must have a diverse culture and fair shot so we can live together in love, peace, and unity, to dialogue and put into action things that can be done to further help everyone succeed and enjoy a quality, equal, fair, peaceful life. Going back to the at-large voting will kill the progress made for minorities in Lake City and Columbia County. It would be a setback in the progression of this great place. Please keep the single-member district voting in place. We need and must have a voice in our government that understands truly what minorities, small groups, races of people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. In his service, sincerely, Terrence Givens. Octavia Williams states that she is opposed to at-large voting. As an American citizen, regardless of race, I support what's right. I stand for single-member district voting because we, the people, have a right to choice who is best to provide representation for every citizen, young and old. Many individuals would love to represent our African-American community, but won't take the time to really support our struggling community concerns. Many people who have represented our district have a true valid reason to sit in political power. I would love to see someone stand with us when injustice shows up where justice should be. Her font was very, very tiny. I apologize for that. Okay. Tyrone and Thala Mullins write, please consider the following letter. No, here we go. I apologize. The letter states, to whom it may concern, regarding at-large voting. As a citizen of Columbia County all my life, a small business servant, owner of this community for 20 years, I am deeply concerned with the upcoming voting process. The at-large voting will be a disgrace and a pushback in time if we go forth with such. What if you had a board committee that did not look like you nor understand your issues? Would you feel important, valued, or essential? We should want a diverse board to represent each district. The reason why this is necessary is to ensure that each culture and ethnicity is represented and considered. Let's be real. Although we are all Columbians, we do not all have the same issues, triumphs, or struggles. With that being said, I strongly urge you to consider the at-large voting. We do not want to be known as a county that looks one way. We should embrace that fact that we are all different, and our board's committee should represent diverse backgrounds and ethnicities. There is definitely more we can do with our funding that can uplift the masses than fight an issue that will set our city backwards. Sincerely, Tyrone and Thala Mullins. Kenedra Rosin, states that she is opposed to at-large voting and tax dollars being spent on this issue. Clarissa Rosin says, I oppose at-large voting and my tax dollars being used in support of this issue. Carlton Tunsil states, I oppose at-large voting. Renika Watson states that she opposes tax dollars being spent on this issue with reference to at-large voting. Therese O'Neill states that she opposes at-large voting. Jamal Thomas states that he's writing in regards to the county moving to at-large voting. I support my community in the notion of finding it not in the best interest of our county. I am opposed to this decision at this time. Jeanette Jolly writes, it is her intent to inform the Charter Review Commission that she is opposed to at-large voting. She will be unable to attend the meeting. She would like very much for this email to be read to express her support for single-member district voting in Columbia County. Anthony Perry states that he is opposed to at-large voting. Please don't use taxpayer dollars on this issue. Thank you for listening. That concludes the emails I received last week. We now move to Sunday. Okay. Glenise Presley writes that against at-large voting election systems, it is concerning that individuals in this county want to revert to an old voting system that is discriminatory and has been struck down in numerous courts under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. What is deeply concerning, this voter suppression tactic has been done during a global pandemic. The at-large voting system is discriminatory and is the most significant cause of voter dilution. This method prevents voters of color from electing candidates of choice where they are not the majority in the jurisdiction. Under the system, the votes of voters of color are submerged by the votes of the majority of white voters. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act not only prohibits excluding minority voters from the polls, but outlaws the use of election systems that make a racial group's votes less effective than those of other groups. The at-large system does not comply with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. To pursue this matter would be a waste of taxpayers' money. Glenise Presley. Nancy James, I'm sending this email to express my concern about at-large voting. I oppose at-large voting and taxpayer dollars being spent on this issue. This is not best for our county. Cortez King writes that Congress has banned at-large voting for all federal elections. It's been discarded by most states. No voting method has been subject to more litigation for its discriminatory impact on local elections. Yet, while the covers are off the discriminatory impact and intent of at-large voting, it persists in hundreds of local jurisdictions. It is designed to divide communities. We do not need that here in Columbia County. I am writing to let you know that I am opposed to at-large voting. It's Cortez King. Cynthia Watson writes that she objects to the voting proposal change and quotes Ephesians 6:12, 6:11 and 12. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of the world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. With that being said, you are a ruler in a high place, but you are willing to do what is right as a Christian. I ask you to do what's right and not be influenced by unrighteousness in this world. You were raised to do right and now trying to raise your children to do right. You now sit in a seat of authority to do right. Please let voting remain that only those in each district will elect their representatives and not the entire county. And then she appeals to me, Mr. Foreman, if you have a godly heart, do the right thing. Thank you. Let's see. Christian Adams writes, Congress has banned at-large voting for all federal elections. It's been discarded in most states. No voting method has been subject to more litigation for its discriminatory impact on local elections. Yet while the covers are off the discriminatory impact and intent of at-large voting, it persists in hundreds of jurisdictions. It is designed to divide communities. We do not need that here in Columbia County. I am writing to let you know that I am opposed to at-large voting. That is Christian Adams. Tanita Orr writes, this is definitely not the time to spend taxpayers' money on non-essential nonsense and hogwash for the desire of selfish individuals for no good reason at all. The system in place is working just fine. Taxpayers are working desperately to keep food on their tables and a roof over their head. Annie Brooks writes, the current voting by districts has worked well in Columbia County as it provides for some form of diversity on the boards. There was a difficult struggle and many long hours of devotion made to obtain district voting to ensure some representation of color on boards. It is needed to promote the attention of the voices, needs of the unspoken local communities. To unravel a working system would be very costly to taxpayers and this already suffering economy. It's not broken, so please, let's not try fixing it. Our way of voting by districts. Thanks for listening. Mary Hale writes that she supports single-member district voting. Blacks deserve a chance to be represented in Columbia County just like anyone else. This change that Hunter Peeler is supporting is a step in the wrong direction. His ideas are not beneficial for our city or county. He being elected, anything in Columbia County will do nothing good and already dividing our community. My opinion, Mary Hale. Alfonso Pope writes, I vote no. Patricia Brady writes, I would like to go on the record as voting against at-large voting in Columbia County, Florida. I am a registered voter in this county, and I would like for the voting to remain as it is, single-member district voting. I will not be able to make the meeting tomorrow night to vote in person. So she passed her thoughts along. Raymond Brady writes that his vote is against at-large voting in Columbia County, Florida. He is a registered voter. Thank you for your attention. Clarence Rosin, at-large voting I am not in favor of. It puts minorities at a disadvantage in elections. County charter should remain in place. I am a minority. Kimmy Harris writes, good afternoon. My name is Miss Kimmy Harris. This email is being sent on behalf of single voting and at-large voting. I deeply oppose the at-large voting. I live in District 1. My address is 293 Northeast Alpha Terrace. I have lived in this district all my life. Me being a citizen of Columbia County and District 1, I am in strong agreement to keep voting process as single voting. Carolyn Jones writes, to whom it may concern, as a lifelong resident of Columbia County and registered voter of District 2, I am greatly opposed to at-large voting proposed by the Charter Review Committee. I understand certain individuals are advocating moving ahead with countywide voting regardless of the cost. I also understand an outside lawyer has advised against it because the ruling was instituted by a federal judge to counteract lack of representation for blacks. Countywide voting would lead to a 90% chance of never having a black on the county commission or the school board. To my understanding, this would affect District 1 tremendously, the district in which I once resided and voted in. Blacks are not the majority in District 1, but the majority of blacks live in District 1. This action cost the county a considerable sum when they fought it before. If the Charter Review Committee should ignore the advice of outside lawyer and proceed with a vote in November to move the county toward countywide voting, there's a 200% chance that we will proceed with another lawsuit, which the county will surely not win. Can the taxpayers of Columbia County afford another costly federal court battle? I think not. I oppose at-large voting. Todd Manning with the save, everybody. All right. Thank you, Todd. Miss Beatrice Harris writes to say that her address is 293 Northeast Alpha Terrace. Her email is sent with consent from her daughter's email due to the fact that she doesn't use an email address. She is in strong agreement with the single voting for her district, and she is strongly against at-large voting. She is a citizen of Columbia County and resident of District 1. She continues to support single voting. She thanks you for your time and attention. Stephanie Fennell writes, I would like to take a moment of your time to express my concern regarding the importance and heated issue concerning at-large voting. First, as a leader in Columbia County, I know how extremely important it is to have individual representation for each district. For example, it is impossible for an individual who lived in District 1, north of Columbia County, to represent the citizens of District 2, which are those of individuals residing in the southern portion of Columbia County, and vice versa. District 1 and District 2 are both minority districts, both lower income and in need of an individual with a great passion for their community and individuals. Most importantly, each community district has their own individual community needs that must not be ignored. I believe wholeheartedly each member of the Board of County Commissioners represents the entire county. However, the county, communities, and the people cannot be served appropriately or justly without having a single member representing individual districts. For example, District 1 equals Ron Williams. There must be accountability and equality of representation for each district of Columbia County. Second, as an individual whom has been a candidate for an elected for a political position, as you know, can become very expensive, time-consuming, etc. The expense of an individual district race is a financial strain. Voting at large will limit diverse candidacy and representation of the board. Only those with the financial means, connections to campaign donations, and other contributing factors will be able to run for such elected positions. Again, limiting the representation of certain districts. Last, I am speechless that any individual or group would consider a federal court case costing the taxpayers thousands of dollars. A decision such as this is careless, not thought out, agenda-seeking, and extremely unjust to the people of our county. Our community deserves equal representation, each district and individual. Thank you for your time. Stephanie K. Johns, formerly known as Stephanie Fennell. Okay. Louis Jefferson writes to say, my name is Louis Jones. I've been living in Lake City all my life, reared my children here. It's always been good. I'm a retired officer of the law, and I still uphold the law to the best of my knowledge. My question is why? There's no need for at-large voting to try to take place because, for one, my main concern is taxpayers' money that it's going to take to change what's already been won in 1984. So now we're talking about retirees' money that we, the citizens, live on. When taxes go up, this hits home. But at-large voting is going to really cause a big problem that Mr. Peeler and the rest doesn't see yet, and it is not right. We as a black people are not going to be treated less than right. Racism, ignorance, belligerent, and name-calling only come alive when we stand up for what's right. So all races are not for this at-large voting, and yes, I'm against. No offense to Mr. Peeler. What is he thinking? He hasn't even been to live yet and trying to put Lake City, our town, the people, in an uproar. Thanks. LaWanda Bell writes, I am drafting this email to make you and whoever this may concern aware of my position on the decision to introduce at-large county voting. I am against the proposal and would like to continue district-specific voting. Thank you for the opportunity to express my feelings. LaWanda Bell. Mr. Merrill Tunsil writes, seriously, I struggle to find the words to express my profound disappointment that a proposal to subvert the previous voting rights of District 1 African Americans has raised its ugly head again. Mr. Foreman, I've known you and many others in the commission for years. I appeal to all of you. Help promote the often confounding but life-giving fight for freedom and fairness for all. How are the most persecuted to have their freedom and full citizenship if their vote will never elect a person who shares their heartfelt interests? Don't kill our only hope of representative leadership on the county level. Those few who are promoting a return to at-large voting are blind to the injustice it would produce. We are truly all in this together. Mr. Merrill Tunsil. Lena Lofton writes, to whom it may concern, I would love to attend the meeting to hear the discussions in reference to at-large voting, but I am considered a high-risk group for COVID-19, and I prefer not to take any chances. At this time, I would like to voice my opinion. I am opposed to at-large voting. I am a registered voter and property owner. Told you guys I got a lot of emails. All right. Mr. Larry Bowden writes, greetings, Attorney Foreman and the committee. I am Larry Bowden Jr., a resident of Lake City, Florida. I'd like to first thank you and the board for your service to the community that we also dearly are working to help make it a better place. With that said, moving to at-large voting will have the exact opposite effect. This isn't the right way to go about it. And to put it simply, it's a really, really bad idea. I've heard arguments by some who agree with at-large voting, stating that the commissioners make decisions for the entire county. Yes, this is true. Should Florida get rid of state house districts? They surely make decisions that affect the entire state and use all of our tax dollars. Should the United States Congress be elected from at-large voting? They make decisions that affect the entire country and even the world using our hard-earned dollars. I dare say that the people who proposed this idea would be up in arms, quite literally, if California or New York chose the representative for the entire country. That's what at-large voting is. It is taking the voice away from the people in communities that are already underserved and yielding it to the powerful. One of the Merriam-Webster definitions of counsel is a lawyer appointed to advise and represent in legal matters an individual client or a corporate and especially a public body. Attorney Lynn Hoshihara was brought on to serve as outside counsel to the committee. Attorney Hoshihara has both her bachelor's cum laude and JD from Florida State University and has years of experience working as an attorney for a county government. She has been employed by Neighbors Giblin and Nickerson for the last 8 years, working on local government law, among other areas of practice. In other words, she knows what she's doing. So when she says that the county and the taxpayers would be on the hook for the legal fees to defend this awful system if voters approve it, but would also be bound to pay the legal fees in the event that the plaintiff wins the lawsuit, and trust me, there will be a lawsuit, I believe her. I am disgusted when pompous members of the board with zero experience and no legal background whatsoever sound their battle cries to take this matter up against not only legal advice, but common sense. In the middle of the global pandemic, where millions across the country, and who knows how many in Columbia County, are without jobs and can't get access to unemployment, we have board members who are willing to potentially spend hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars to try and silence an entire block of voters in the name of nothing. This isn't some righteous cause that is being taken up. This isn't a fight to give a voice to the voiceless. This isn't a tactic to bring new voters to the table. This is a slap in the face of every tear, every drop of blood, every bead of sweat that fell in the fight for people who look like me to be able to go to the ballot box and vote and elect someone with our best interests in mind. While this may be a slap in the face, I have zero plans of turning the other cheek. A concerned citizen, Larry Bowden Jr. Willie Collins III wrote, I oppose. I'm a resident for 32 years here in Lake City, Florida. Oppose at-large voting and spending tax dollars on such issues. Timothy Camille writes, I'm opposed to at-large voting. Nikita Thomas writes, the Republicans of Columbia County want to divide communities. Congress has banned at-large voting for all federal elections. It's been discarded by most states. No voting method has been subject to more litigation for its discriminatory impact on local elections. Yet, while the covers are off the discriminatory impact and intent of at-large voting, it persists in hundreds of local jurisdictions. It is designed to divide communities. We do not need that here in Columbia County. I'm writing to let you know that I am opposed to at-large voting. Dr. Mobley already spoke. I can go over your sir. Thank you, sir. J.B. Wilson writes, as a lifelong Columbia County resident of over 70 years and owner of several family-owned small businesses, I'm gravely concerned about at-large voting. As a visionary community, we should want to continue to be progressive, wanting to be culturally and ethically diverse. I think maybe meant right, ethnically. Each and every person deserves fair representation. In 2020, to consider at-large voting is a return to taxation without representation. I strongly and with urgency hope that you reconsider this bias and backward at-large voting scheme. James B. Wilson and family. Reverend Shaleda Mira. This email is sent to express my opposition to at-large voting and tax dollars being spent in this issue. Single voter per district allows individuals who reside within their respective districts to have a voice on the issues within their districts of residence. Thank you. Kayla Harris writes to say that she opposes at-large voting and tax dollars being spent on this issue. Shirley Rentz writes that I am a law-abiding citizen of Columbia County, a property owner, taxpayer, and registered voter for many, many years. I vote in every election. I need to know that my votes count too. We cannot go back in history and put the minority population in a new so-called legal Jim Crow. At-large voting is a slap in the face. Our forefathers built this nation with their blood, sweat, and tears while chained and treated so harshly. We have a right to make our votes count at the ballot box. Please relay to the members of the county commission, citizens of this county, that this move will cost the citizens of Columbia County in more ways than one. Thank you for allowing me to voice my deep concerns regarding at-large voting. Do the right thing. Shirley Rentz. Akila White writes to say, I oppose the vote. I think that means I oppose at-large voting. And then Belinda Kennedy writes to say, I oppose at-large voting and the taxes. Billy Wallace writes, I am emailing you to voice my opinion, and I am against at-large voting. It is a tragedy this day and age to return to the good old days of voter suppression attempts. The citizens of this county should not allow a few select people who wants no progress as far as races and to keep others locked down and from having any representation from their race on this issue. So please do not allow this attempt by some folks who would like to turn the hands back on the clock. Meljanon Turner writes, I am a concerned tax-paying citizen and business owner, and I am opposed to at-large voting. I'm also opposed to my tax dollars being spent on this issue, and I appreciate your consideration of my views on this matter. Mr. Delton Tuberville has wrote a letter. Columbia County Charter Amendment Suggestion, amend Article 2, Section 2.1 composition. I am suggesting an amendment to the Columbia County Charter. I suggest we change the Columbia County Commission from 5 district seats to 3 district seats and 2 at-large seats for a total of 5 commissioners. I am hopeful this would satisfy all points of view on the matter. The courts would probably view this as a better option than a countywide election for all 5 seats. Both sides of this question, countywide and/or district voting, would have their point of view addressed. This would also allow the electorate of Columbia County to elect 60% of the commission. They would vote for their district commissioner and 2 at-large commission seats. If this amendment is passed, Columbia County Commission would draw 3 districts prior to the 2022 election cycle. These are the suggested changes below for their seats. For the future. The current commissioners for District 1 Commissioner would remain until the 2024 election cycle. District 2 Commissioner would become at-large in the 2022 election cycle. District 3 Commissioner would remain until the 2024 election cycle. District 5 becomes at-large, 1 Commissioner, and would remain until the 2024 election cycle. District 4 becomes District 2 Commissioner under the new districting plan in the 2022 election cycle. This also keeps the even-odd seats in their current election cycles. District seats 1, 3, and at-large 1 would stand for election in 2024 and every 4 years thereafter. District 2 and at-large 2 would stand for election in 2022 and every 4 years thereafter. And that is from Mr. Delton Tuberville. Mark Combs Turner writes, I oppose at-large voting and tax dollars being spent on this issue. Kamaria Williams writes, my name is Kamaria Williams, and I want the record to reflect that I oppose at-large voting due to it minimizing Black voters. I would like it to stay the same. I have another letter. This is from Mr. Glenn L. Presley, Columbia County Attorney Joel Foreman, to be read at tonight's Columbia County Charter Review Committee meeting. I oppose at-large voting in Columbia County. I am Glenn L. Presley, signee of the single-member lawsuit versus at-large voting filed and won in 1984, along with Glenn L. Bowden and Leonard O'Neill. I unequivocally opposed Columbia County's discriminatory at-large voting in 1984. Today, I am even more against the concept of at-large voting. It is unfair and discriminatory. I hope each of you has carefully read the lawyer's report of the Columbia County Charter Review Commission Operations Committee. It is replete with strong reasons to dispel, shelve, put to rest, and get rid of the at-large voting idea. One of the best things to happen in Columbia County is single-member district voting. If a thing is working fine, why attempt to fix it? I'm old enough to remember when there was single-member district voting in Lake City, Columbia County in the 1930s and early 40s when Oliver Bradley, a black man, ran for city council. A strong rumor was that he won the election. Paper ballots were used during that time. However, the white candidate was declared the winner. This brought about the change from single-member district voting to at-large voting when State Representative Shorty Biedenbaugh, avowed segregationist of Lake City, Columbia County, at the next Florida State Legislative Session held in Tallahassee, Florida, recommended to change the Columbia County voting pattern from single-member district to at-large voting. This was done to dilute and discourage blacks from voting. The same unfair and discriminatory ideas prevail today in some people in Columbia County. Some 8 years ago, I was a member of the Columbia County Charter Review Committee. A small subgroup in the meeting first wanted to add 2 at-large commissioners, which was immediately shot down. Their next proposal was let's change the present single-member district voting to at-large voting. The 15-member Columbia County Charter Review Committee overwhelmingly voted against the idea. I pray this CRC committee will vote against at-large scheme tonight. Know this, single-member district voting in Columbia County resulted in blacks being elected to the Columbia County School Board. Coach Richard Anders, Mrs. Barbara Foreman, Minister Leonard Johnson, and Miss Neri Smith. For the first time, black city council members, Mr. Glenn L. Bowden, Mrs. Betty Lane, Mr. Gene Jefferson, Mr. Zach Polk, and Mr. Jake Hill. Board of County Commissioners, Mr. Ron Williams, and yes, the first black police chief, Chief Agatha Gilmore, who has elevated Lake City's police department to be among the best in Florida. In Columbia County, racial discrimination is still alive and well. The Southern Poverty Law Center includes Lake City, Florida as a hotbed of hate. The supervisor of elections voting records show today a discriminatory voting, mayor's race, twice, Bowden, Jeffers, that's not explained, pattern. Hate groups on occasions use Lake City to house conferences and rallies. These groups are invited to come to Lake City, otherwise they would not come. The federal court order remains in effect in Columbia County. I, Glenn L. Presley, will certainly challenge, hopefully it won't come to this, the at-large change in federal court. The out-of-sight, exorbitant, unaffordable cost of attorney's fees plus other costs will be fruitless waste of taxpayers' time and thousands of dollars. The situation is not broken. Do not try to fix it. Please, I beseech you in the name of fairness, vote no on at-large voting in Columbia County. Mr. Glenn L. Presley. The next email is from Aldonia Bowden. I, Aldonia Bowden, oppose at-large voting due to the fact it minimizes black voters, and we should be able to vote for the county elect you choose, and it should stay how it is. Shelboni Paxton, I oppose at-large voting and tax dollars being spent on this issue. Akila Bowden opposes at-large voting due to the fact it minimizes the black voters. It should be able to choose. Thank you. Aaron Murphy writes, good afternoon. I'm sending this email to express my opposition to at-large voting in Columbia County. I believe that not only is it a step back for our community, but that it may also cause unnecessary division amongst residents. Additionally, I think that it is a waste of taxpayer dollars. Mr. Chad Cray has written a letter. It has come to my attention that the county's current method of voter representation that was established in 1984 is in danger of being replaced with a proven dysfunctional system. The single-member districting system that was used, that we use, was enacted in order to make the voter representation more accurate and less prone to corruption. Before thinking about restoring at-large voting, one must look at the area's previous voting systems and why they were put in place. Let's start by looking at why at-large voting was initially put in place in a city as large as Jacksonville. The yellow fever epidemic of 1888 resulted in a mass exodus of white people running from the North Florida area, but not everybody could afford to make the run. By September, Jacksonville's population was about 17,000, decreased to 13,757. Of the remaining residents, 9,812 of them were African American. This put severe dents in the efforts of the then conservative Democratic Party of the post-Reconstruction era, just as they were trying to recover white voting strength. The governor stepped in and appointed all of the officials in order to regain conservative power, after which severe gerrymandering, guaranteed that wealthier white conservatives held all political power in the region. Using at-large voting was not just a measure used in Jacksonville, but also in Columbia County to do the same thing. After the epidemic, the last African American to be elected to the city council or as an alderman in Columbia County was Benjamin Simpson in 1879. The effort to commence single-member district representation in 1984 resulted in an immediate change as African American officials were quickly elected. The change to single-member district voting did more than give voters more diverse ethnic representation on elected boards. District voting also helped all constituents from poorer parts of the county in their at-large voting tends to lead to widespread underdevelopment of less wealthy areas because they are often overlooked by at-large elected officials. Single-member district voting helps to fix this because at-large candidates tend to only listen to the individual needs of the wealthier areas for the reason that focusing development there results in the largest potential contributions to their campaigns. Yet another flaw with using at-large voting is that it requires candidates to receive a plurality of the vote. And if they do not, then the county must pay for multiple runoff elections until the candidates do. The funds wasted on the extra elections could be used more beneficially on efforts to sustain or advance community stability. I thank you for your time, and I hope that you will acknowledge that single-member district voting is still the way things should be carried out for not only Columbia County, but everywhere. Sincerely, Chad Gray. The next email is from Jody Dupree. Mr. Dupree has sent a letter as well. Please read at public comments portion concerning at-large voting. Thank you for the opportunity to have this read into the record for the issue of allowing all of the electorate to elect all offices which represent our community. Giving back to the community is very challenging when you are just getting by yourself. So I would like to thank everyone serving on the CRC for giving back to the community with this very important work. While reviewing the other charter of the 20 counties that have home rule governments, I found that several counties have at-large voting for their county commissioners. On July the 2nd, 2019, I contacted Ms. Kim Burton, the supervisor of elections of Alachua County, asking her if I was understanding that Alachua had in their charter at-large voting. She responded that they did have all commissioners elected at large. I then asked Ms. Barton if she felt any of her electorate was disenfranchised due to the election process. She responded, quote, "Not at all. It gives everyone and minorities a larger voice and more representation," close quote. After getting this information from Ms. Barton, I talked to many people to ask what their opinion of this would be. Let me qualify this. I did not speak to elected officials. I had no one tell me this was not good for the community once they understood the process. The process has been greatly misrepresented and misunderstood. I would like to explain that the qualifying requirements that exist today would also be required with at-large voting. Each and every person wishing to run for office of county commissioner would be required to live in the district they would represent. The difference would be when a person went to the polls to vote on their ballot, it would include all commissioners' races, not just the district that you live. No group of family members in the south end of the county or residing in the same district will be allowed to run in a district outside of where they resided. I would like to see the electorate of Columbia County be allowed to decide how their commissioners are elected, which is their right. I will explain my reasoning. At-large voting is allowed under the home rule. The conditions of minority district that existed in 1984 does not exist today per the supervisor of elections of Columbia County. Columbia County is not the same community on many fronts today compared to 1984. I feel changes have been positive as well, and not unlike all other communities, there is still more to be done. All actions taken by the Board of County Commissioners related to resolutions, ordinances, and most all motions directly affect the citizens of Columbia County as a whole, generally not bound by district lines. Commissioners use their judgment to pass motions or regulate the citizens of Columbia County. Citizens of Columbia County should be allowed to judge them and cast votes based on their own judgment. County policy as it relates to transportation infrastructure for county-funded roads states the operations manager will present to the BOCC annually in April road projects to commissioners for their consideration in a public meeting and funding based on standards identified within that policy. This policy is for the countywide needs based on approved standards. The standards are not being used, and that roads selected based on countywide needs are being divided by districts evenly based on year-end funds being divided by 5. Commissioners having input beyond what is required on approval process. In other words, commissioners advise staff which roads in their districts will be sent up for formal board approval before the public meeting, as policy dictates is to be done. The separation of powers becomes blurred at best. It is important to state that this process did not just begin. It has been the status quo for many years, even when I served on the board. The county manager and public works director was asked if policy had been approved to budget road projects by district. They advised that the policy for funding, for district funding for road projects did not exist. According to county staff, if the Board of County Commissioners were elected at large, it would eliminate 95% of their problems. Just in the last election cycle, the electorate had to vote on a referendum to raise the sales tax 1 cent in order to pay for additional capital projects, and were told publicly that if the sales tax did not pass, the property taxes would be raised. The sales tax failed, and after much outcry from the public, property taxes did not go up either. Soon after a conversation about lowering taxes began, I'm certain this would not have transpired if commissioners were accountable to all people. The cost of elections will certainly be more than single-member districts. However, the election laws allow for candidates to speak to the needs of the community and have the community donate to the candidates' efforts, which is exactly how the election process is designed to work. It will certainly ensure that commissioners elected will put in the work that the position requires. Administrative codes reviewed as required, policy being followed as required, all provisions of the charter will be upheld and diligently followed. Performance evaluations of the county manager performed as required. Comprehensive budget analysis performed to ensure tax dollars are spent wisely and in the best interest of the public. Contrary to the editorial in the Lake City Reporter, there is no requirement to go before a judge and get permission to consider this initiative. There is no evidence of a violation, nor have any been presented to the voter that the Voter Act of 1965 would be violated. If so, there are many counties that would be facing litigation. The recommendations of the attorneys concerning going back to the courts to confirm the ability of the initiative was not a legal opinion, it was just an opinion. The legal opinion was that the county has the right to debate and, if approved, move forward with the initiative to the people for consideration. Makes me wonder who exactly is the Lake City Reporter attempting to protect, the people or elected officials. The Lake City Reporter has stated that there is a faction of people on the CRC that are behind this, with no evidence to support anything of the kind outside of a process for the dialogue to be heard and debated. The Lake City Reporter made this statement in spite of the fact that this is a process that has been identified for issues to be considered. No conspiracies exist except maybe an attempt to stop the voice of the people from being heard. The above list is just some of the reasons I personally believe in at-large voting. However, the most important reason for this consideration is that with all issues and findings, the community expects that all issues are weighed on a balanced scale representing what is in the best interest of the community. Politics may not have a place in the work of the people, but that simply is not reality. Politics do exist and will always place a finger on the scales to influence the outcome to the benefit of the agenda, which has been evident throughout this process. Sometimes an issue is large enough that the hands of politicians can't move the scale away from the right of the people. It is my hope that this is one of those issues. All issues should be debated based on the reasons that any issue is positive for the community, and also what are the advantages of the same issue to the community, not conjecture, that is the job. I understand the position of all members of the CRC, and the hammer of politics can be very heavy to bear. How those who may not agree with your position or reasoning attempts to devalue your opinion by calling it rhetoric. I want to thank you for the work that has been attempted here. Concerning the issue of at-large voting, the scale revealed to me that the advantages of the community greatly outweigh any disadvantages that may exist. Therefore, in my opinion, the proper course of action for the CRC is to allow the citizens of Columbia County to decide how their government representatives will be chosen. Thank you for your consideration, J.L. Dupree. Mr. Rents Galloway writes that he is taking this time out of his day to let it be known that he strongly opposes at-large voting at this time and the dollars being spent on the issue. Ms. Gloria Rents says that she is sending this message against at-large voting. Ms. Betty Kelly has sent a letter. In my role as pastor of New Bethel Missionary Baptist Church here in Lake City, and as a citizen of the community since early 1980, I am writing this letter in strong opposition to the efforts to undo a federal ruling handed down in December of 1985. This ruling made single-member districting the lawful election process for electing county officials. As a result of this ruling, an African American was elected to the Board of County Commissioners and 4 school board members. The late Richard Coach Anders was a member of New Bethel, and the current African American school board member, Neri Smith, is a member of New Bethel. I do not believe these gains would have been made possible if at-large voting was the legal voting process. I'm asking each member of the Charter Review Commission to strongly consider the harm inflicted upon the African American community and our Columbia County community if the commission decides to vote to retrogress to the days prior to December 1985. It is my prayer and the prayer of the New Bethel Missionary Baptist Church family that the decision made at tonight's meeting will be the decision that moves this community forward and will provide for this community a fair, brighter, and better future for all its citizens. Grace and peace. I'm sorry, that was from Alvin Baker. I guess that was sent through somebody else's email address. Janice Stockton writes, it is my sincerest prayer that this correspondence reaches you in good health and with reasonable time and energy to consider my thoughts on the matter of at-large voting. My name is Janice Stockton. I serve as interim pastor of the Salvation Holiness Church, which is located in District 1 of Columbia County. I am extremely concerned about the extreme disadvantage that at-large voting would place on, especially the people of District 1. Our tax dollars are not separated. We don't pay them as a group, and no one man is responsible for us all, but we pay as individuals. We are not required to pay black taxes or white taxes, rich taxes or poor taxes. We are just simply required to pay taxes, and we do. For the most part, we are satisfied with the progress that we have made, that we have seen in our district, and thus we vote accordingly. We are not ignorant of our vote, as every year at election time, many candidates visit our churches and introduce themselves, share their vision and concerns for the community, and ask for our vote. Progress for Lake City has been slow enough without impediments from individuals who seem to think that one person's vision for our community should represent all people of that community, especially when the visionary doesn't have to live, work, worship, or even visit that community. For Columbia County to even consider such a thing, at-large voting, is a disgust to the people and a disgrace to the leadership. Shame on the members of the CRC that support such a slap in the face to the people of Lake City. I thought the purpose of these boards was to ensure and protect proper use of tax dollars and progress for taxpayers and the communities for which we live. At-large voting takes us back to a place where we were portrayed as not having enough intelligence to know how to drink from a water faucet or use a door handle for signs that read colored or whites only. And forgive me, and niggers don't let the sun go down with you in town. We're placed publicly and without shame. Now I would like to think that Lake City, beyond this level of foolery and vain disrespect, and disregard for fellow citizens. One person didn't build Columbia County, and one person alone doesn't live in Columbia County. There are many people that live here and work every day to make this place an honorable place to call home, and I like my vote. I want my vote, and I'm asking that you all respect my vote. At-large voting is not the answer for Lake City, Columbia County. Respectfully, Janice Stockton. Eddie Allen writes, I'm sorry, it's in the subject. At-large voting, I'm against it. Why is a federal law trying to be overturned? A racist agenda. Sandra Price writes, to whom it may concern, the answer to at-large voting in Columbia County, Florida is and should always be a resounding no. The taxpayers should not have to pay money for losing battle at the whining of two young hot dogs with a lack of understanding and or a heart of stone with a total disregard for people of color. You hired an attorney for a whopping $275 an hour for sound advice, which you received but did not like the outcome of the finding and advice, and now has decided to pursue the issue anyway. In my opinion, this is a waste of taxpayers' money. You have lost once. Why waste taxpayer money to lose again? I respectfully ask the CRC to put an end to this nonsense tonight. Vote no to at-large voting in Columbia County. We do not need representation, we do not need representation in districts that do not have concerns for the people in the district. As the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and it is not broke. Finally, it is completely asinine to waste money on a losing battle. Thank you, Sandra Price. Bernice Presley sent a letter. I am Bernice D. Presley, retired educator at the Columbia County School System. I am proud to call Lake City, Florida my home. Please be informed that I strongly support single-member district voting, not at-large voting. Single-member district voting has been very effective for many years in Columbia County because we have diversity representation on the city and county boards, committees, groups, etc. This diversity is a mirror image of our wonderful Lake City community. As a retired educator of the Columbia County school system, my question is why now? Why dismantle something as single-member district voting that has been a success story in our community for many years? For example, when I attend the school board meeting and see the diversity on the board, a nurse, a former assistant principal, a former teacher, etc., I feel so proud to be in Lake City, Florida, a city where there is so much love in the air. This diversity on the board would not have been possible with at-large voting. We need continuous unity in Lake City, Florida. As a retired educator of the Columbia County school system, my question is why now? A time when students' classroom learning has been temporarily interrupted with the COVID-19. The community should begin to think or realize that this disruption can be psychologically damaging to some of the students. Distance learning, no complete graduation, no prom, etc. The community should not add another frustrated topic to these students to have to think about, single-member districts, etc. Additionally, what the community is trying to do will cost the taxpayers additional money. This money can be used to purchase laptops, iPads, computers, also provide internet service for some of the students' homes. To change from a system that is working great to a system to satisfy a few people will cause a great loss for our students. Remember Psalms 127:3, children are a gift from God, a gift from God. They are his reward. Students and children might not remember all that this community has taught them, but they will remember how this community has treated them. That's from Bernice Presley. Okay. All right. Clenita Holton writes that I'm against at-large voting in our community. This disenfranchises Black Americans in our county. This was fought years ago and the plaintiffs prevailed. We must not go backwards. We need proper representation in all districts, particularly the one I live in. I promise you, we, members of the Black community, will engage in active support of what we believe in. So much isn't right in society now. This backwards move will only benefit the personal political future of specific individuals. Please, on behalf of myself and the Black community, I appeal to you. Please continue with single district voting representation. Lord Clayton, my stance on at-large voting. While I like the idea of voters being able to vote on ballot referendums, I wholeheartedly disagree that Columbia County should adopt at-large voting. While this route is currently being considered by the Charter Review Commission, there are multiple reasons why I'm opposed. At-large voting disenfranchises minority voters. It's simple math. If a voting bloc is considered a minority, this group doesn't make up enough of the electorate to have proper representation, and simply put, that's not right. Take, for example, if every registered voter in the USA gets to vote in all 100 state senators, the popular vote would have the final say, which is why we use the electoral college system for presidential elections. In Columbia County, the area of town that are home to the largest political donors would also have the nicest roads, the best parks, more community centers, etc. To summarize, there is a reason the preamble to the Constitution states, "We the people." Every person in every part of Columbia County deserves a vote that fairly represents them and their community. Michelle Presley writes, single-member district voting should not be changed because it allows diversity and eliminates unfairness, which will result with at-large voting. The system is not broken. Why tamper with it? Kevin Miller writes that he opposes at-large voting and tax dollars being spent on this issue. David Braun writes, I write in opposition to countywide at-large voting and to demonstrate with the Charter Review Commission that they should adopt this change from single-member districts. I put this for the following reasons. It seems about like allowing the several states to vote on who would represent Florida in the Senate of the USA. A Coloradan and a New Yorker not residing here should not presume to tell a Floridian who shall represent Florida. Likewise, it is unfair to let the whole county decide who shall represent District 1. The natural and probable effect of countywide voting will be that the electorate as a whole will vote for a white instead of a black man, regardless of the other's merits, whereas District 1 has historically elected a black man since the court-ordered change for the 1984 consent judgment. For what it's worth, the county is still under that judgment. To fly in its face without obtaining an order lifting it is troubling. I do not believe the county can afford it. There is still the issue of contempt of court for violating a court order. Please lay this letter before the commission. I put it, they should not do this. Mr. Brown. The last one that got in under the wire was Miss Michelle Maddox, 5:53 this afternoon. In regards to at-large voting, I feel it would make it impossible for a person who wants to run for office but doesn't have $50,000 to spend. They will never be able to run for office. There would only be a few individuals that could have that type of funds. It is fair that the people of Fort White get to vote for a person who represents individuals in the north end of the county. No, it is not. The whole at-large voting item has caused so much division in our community. We should all be kind and have respect for all individuals, no matter what their race. As the song many of us sang as a child says, Jesus loves all the little children, red, yellow, black, or white. Just my opinion, the Maddox family. Mr. Chair, I appreciate everyone's patience in getting that done. Promise kept. There are no further public comments.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Public comment on this issue is closed. What is the pleasure of the board? Any discussion?
I move to deny the recommendation. This is Sandra Buckcamp.
Ms. Buckcamp, you're recognized. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. I move we deny this finding, that we reject it.
Motion.
This is Sandra Smith. I second that motion.
We have a motion to reject and we have a second. Ms. Secretary, did you get the names? Discussion from the board? Mr. Peeler?
All right, so we're gonna go ahead here. Clearly, I've become the face of this at-large voting. I've been called names, I've been called hateful things, and it's appalling. Certain ones of you in here know who I am. Certain ones of you know how I feel. Certain ones of you know who I really am. And what some certain individuals have called me are just wrong, it's untruthful, it's hurtful. I hear some of you come up here today, you've made statements about what you've had to deal with as when you were younger, of course, or even now. And I feel for you because it's awful. Violence is never the answer. Because let me tell you something, I've been there too. Since I've voiced my opinion of at-large voting, I have been called numerous names. I've had my life threatened. And excuse me, ladies, how I say this, I've been told that I needed my ass beat because I had a different opinion than certain other ones. I couldn't even get out of my vehicle at the SNS the other day without someone yelling, F you, you N-word hater, because I had a different opinion. It's both ways there. Now, I'm not saying any of you in here did that, because I know who did it, and I know the ones that have said things. Some are in here. But let's put it this way. There are 67 counties in the state of Florida. 40 counties have at-large voting. 40 counties have at-large voting. Some of which surround us. Many of which have black county commissioners. Here's another one for you. In Leon County, one closer to us, they have single-member districts and 2 at-large districts. One of their at-large commissioners is a black citizen. Let's put it this way, too. If this passed, it would not affect the school board, as some would say. It would not affect the city council, as some would say. The school board has their own statutes, and the city council, the city has their own charter. This would strictly affect the county commission. This was not ever brought up to be about race. Other folks have made it that way. Commissioner Williams has even said himself that he's ran, I believe it's 3 times that he's ran countywide, 1976 and he lost, 1982 he won, and 1984 he won. Okay? It can happen. It's not the color of your skin. It does not matter if you're white, you're brown, or you're black. It does not matter. It matters who you are and if you can do the right job. If everybody voted by race in District 1, Commissioner Williams wouldn't be elected. But that's not the case. There are white folks that vote for black citizens. There are black folks that will vote for white citizens. I've been for this. I have. And I'll tell you the number one reason I've been for this is because I've been approached a bunch since I become appointed to this position by citizens in the community about wanting the chance to have a say. My main cause about this is to put it on the ballot to let every citizen in this county that votes in the November election to decide if they want at-large voting or not. It shouldn't be decided up to us, should it pass or should it not. It should be decided up to the voters. That's why I say it should pass here and put on the ballot for voters to decide. Then it puts in that position, if the majority of the voters say yes, they're saying they're okay with their taxpayer money going to a lawsuit. But this has been nothing to grab at one person or one race. It's appalling that I have been called the names that I have, my life's been threatened, and false accusations have been made about me. But let's remember the main reason that I have pushed this, and it's for the voters in this entire county to decide. Nobody in Fort White would run in District 1. Nobody, the east of town, would run the west of town. They would have to remain in that district. They would have to remain in that district, but the county as a whole would elect it. So I'll use an example. I see 2 county commissioners in here. If they both win re-election this year and decide to run for re-election in 2024, and if we were at large voting, Tim Murphy could not run as County Commissioner District 1. Ron Williams could not run as County Commissioner District 5. They'd have to run in that district. They'd have to reside in that district, but they'd run countywide. It worked before. It did. And it works in all of these other counties, majority of the counties in the state. But like I've said, it's not the fact of one race. It's not the fact of one person. It's the fact of letting the voters decide what they really want to vote with. Thank you.
Any other discussion by the
Mr.
board?
Chairman, I don't want to have much to say. I think the president spoke.
You're recognized. Please speak up, sir.
Get closer to the mic, Glenn.
Mario Cabo, Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion by the board?
I thought that's Mario trying to talk.
Mr. Mario?
Yes, sir, I'd like to comment on the at-large voting proposal.
We recognize you, sir. Can you speak up, please?
Yes, sir. My fellow committee members, I have spent the majority of my lifetime residing here in Lake City, Florida. And I personally can think of no better piece of legislation that has benefited all of the voters of Columbia County. Mind you, not just the black voters, than the federal ruling to change from at-large to single-member district voting. Typically, when legislation involving voter rights issues are debated, the resulting dialogue and comments tend to be negative, resulting in bad feelings and ill will among people of differing viewpoints. Mr. Chairman and committee members, I submit to you this is not the case with the current legislation. I ask you to step back, take a look at the forest, not the trees, and then you'll realize the positive impact this has had on all the voting citizens of Columbia County. Survey the residents of Lulu, Mason City, and Fort White. Ask them if they would want to return to the system of at-large voting. Mr. Chairman, when faced with difficult decisions, I've always followed my guiding principle, and that is, it's not who's right, but what's right that matters in the end. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, Sandra Smith.
Just a moment, ma'am. Mr. Foreman, you're recognized.
It's my understanding that we have a motion on the floor to reject the findings and recommendation of the Operations Committee, and it's been duly seconded. Is that correct?
Correct, sir.
I'd like to call the question on the motion.
If I may just make a comment before we vote, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Bowden, you're recognized.
As I was about to say, the people have spoken, and I don't think I have too much to add to the conversation without getting a little bit emotional. As you all know, I was a planner for the suit in 1984, along with the late Leonard O'Neill and Glenn L. Presley. I was president of the NAACP at the time, and it's filed on behalf of those similarly situated, which is a lot of those people in the audience today. I regret that Mr. Dupree couldn't be here because I like to talk to people when they're in the face, and but he made some comments that I think need to be addressed. He said he talked with the former election supervisor of Alachua County. Well, if you want to be fair, you would talk with the election supervisor in Suwannee County, Hamilton County. I mean, comparing Alachua County with Columbia County is just disingenuous, and that's putting it mildly. Alachua County, the first African American person to be elected for Congress came from Alachua County. They've been electing black folk to the office in Alachua County for years. The socioeconomic conditions and the polarized voting that exists in Columbia County just doesn't exist in Alachua County. That's not even a fair comparison, to be honest with you. The other issue I want to speak to, someone raised the issue about the residency. It's understood that you got to live in your in District 1, but the problem is you can live in District 1 and lose because the people in District 2, 3, 4, and 5 vote against you. Back to the city council. Before the city council went to single district voting, the late Dupree Moody represented Precinct 10. The people who lived in Precinct 10 voted against Dupree Moody. And because Dupree Moody was able to win 12, 13, 14, he was able to win the seat. So that's the fault in it, is that it's not where you live, it's how people vote. And there's no history since 1984. There's not been a single black person on the ballot for a state seat that on the ballot state countywide that came anywhere close to winning any precinct, except for Precinct 10 that's black, Precinct 12 that's black, and District 1 they got a high percentage of black. Everywhere else, I don't care what the governor's race, the attorney general race, nowhere in this county have a person of color came close to winning a seat, getting the majority of the vote. So there's polarized voting in this community, whether we admit it or not. And I just think that to suggest that put it before the voters, I don't want to raise this, but some things we as a committee have to make a decision on. We the Child Review Committee, we're making recommendations on issues that should go forward. It's going to be in the best interest of the community, not to see if the voters are going to vote for it. If in fact, when the University of Alabama was ordered to desegregate, And George Wallace stood on the steps of the University of Alabama and declared segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. Had the people of Alabama been able to vote, they would have voted to keep it segregated. So some issues don't go before the vote. This is an issue of right and wrong. This is about morality. If you have to understand what it would mean, members, to lose something that we have fought so hard for, it's like you're taking something from us. And I don't think that this committee should even push this effort forward. It's divisive. And I agree with Mr. Hunter. Yes, we take it personal. I take it personal because I think an attack on my voting, not a right to vote, but my right to choose the person of my choice is offensive and is a violation of my rights. And it makes no sense to me for us to be considering this today in 2020 with all that's going on. Mr. Moody, Mr. Dupree, according to the bill stackers, the only person who had a lot of conversation with Attorney Hozier Harrell has been Mr. Dupree. There's no record, there's been no serious discussion among the Operations Committee. It's almost like he led this charge, and then he resigned and got a whole lot to say about what he thinks as if he is a lawyer. Yes, this may not be a legal opinion from Attorney Hozier Harrell, but we hired her not only for a legal opinion, but for advice. We didn't hire her or even Mr. Foreman to give us a legal opinion. Sometimes you want advice. Most of the time we ask them what they think. And her advice was the order remains in effect and should not be disregarded. Now that's an opinion from an attorney that we're paying $275 an hour. And I'm assuming, and I asked him if he wanted to be put on the spot, if whether or not our attorney that's here today, do he agree with Ms. Hozier Harrell, who she says the order remains in effect and should not be disregarded? That's for you, Attorney Foreman.
I do, sir.
And do you also agree with the first part of the recommendation said that if the voters of Columbia County wishing to change the current election system to allow for at-large countywide voting, the county should first seek and obtain approval from the federal court?
That's strong practical advice from an economic standpoint. Going to the judge and asking for relief from the order, you're talking about maybe tens of thousands of dollars, whereas defending a suit on the back end, if an amendment passed, you're talking high hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not breaking $1 million, if the plaintiffs recovered an award against the county.
Well, sure, I'm finished. I think there's nothing else I can do to convince the board that this is a bad idea. If you're not gotten enough opinion from the people who have spoken, many of these people here are ministers, pastors of churches, some gone, they represent a serious constituency, and it would really be a slap in the face for this to move forward, in my opinion, and I end my conversation on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. O'Neill, just a moment. Mr. O'Neill is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I think that we need to have a very abject view of what we're doing tonight. It's obvious that if we continue in the direction that we're going, that it will drive a wedge in our community. I don't think we need a wedge. I don't think that at-large voting is important enough to have this type of situation going on. I think that we should.
Order, please. Thank you.
I think that we should follow up and reject. I do not feel comfortable moving forward with that large voting.
Mr. Chair, we can't hear Mr. O'Neill.
He supports your motion and your second, Mr. Foreman.
Thank you very much.
I would like to, it's regrettable about the friction that exists between some of our commissioners, former and present, but I would like to reiterate what I had said earlier. A vote yes puts an end to this entire issue. A vote no keeps it alive. Is that correct?
Correct.
Therefore, I call the question on the motion.
Ms. Secretary, will you call for a vote, please?
And she should read the motion if she wouldn't mind.
And if you would, read the motion, please, so everybody can have a clear understanding.
Yes, sir. The motion is to reject the finding. And it was seconded by Commissioner Smith. Glenn L. Bowden,
Yes.
Mario Kopek,
Yes.
Sandra Smith,
Yes.
Wally Germany,
Yes.
John O'Neill,
Yes.
Hunter Peeler,
No.
Ronald Foreman.
Yes.
Tom Autumn,
Yes.
Sandra Buckham,
Yes.
Robert Lane,
Yes.
Kimberly Skinner,
Yes.
Lance Hill,
Yes.
Stephen Douglas,
Yes.
Charles Keith,
Yes.
Glenn Owens.
Yes.
The ayes have it, sir.
With that, we can. Order, please. I would just like to say that this has been a very touchy subject. I know, and in my case, I would personally like to see Mr. Ron Williams spread some of his technical expertise to my district commissioner and straighten up some of the problems we got in my district. With that, this subject is rejected.
Take a pipe break.
Mr. Foreman, we'd like to take a 5-minute bathroom break.
Yes, sir.
Y'all leave?
All right.
It's gonna be pretty quick. It's fast though. It ain't no, it ain't even doing
Coming back to order.
Attorney Foreman, I give you the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The item I have under unfinished business for consideration this evening is the draft ethics code. You'll recall from several months ago when you approved the findings and recommendations of the compliance committee that the recommendation included a proposed ethics code. That did take some time to get prepared. What you have in front of you is a 30-page ordinance. That's not considered light reading by most standards. I do hope you've had some opportunity to review it. I certainly understand if not everybody's versed on it yet. However, if the board is inclined, I'd like to request a motion to approve so that we can move this item forward into public hearings.
So moved.
I second that.
Have a motion to approve by Mr. Autumn. Have a second by Mr. Peeler. Discussion.
Okay, yeah, that came out of my committee, Joel. I know it's been late, we've heard a lot, but I'd like to make the monetary fine maximum for the second violation to be $750 versus $5, therefore adding it as a more serious violation, second being more serious than the first. It's on page, don't know what page it's on. Code of Ethics, section 2-507. Just so the committee understands, we have three types of violation. The second violation is $250 up to $500. Violation 1, I believe, is up to $500. I'm just saying, for your second penalty, the upper limit for penalty should be more than the upper limit for the first violation.
Right.
See what I'm saying, Joel? Just make $500 to $750, and other than that, I think the commission has approved this code of ethics.
If I could explain that. So the first offense, depending on the gravity of the offense, is no less than 250, but no more than 500. So the Board of County Commissioners would have that latitude. The second offense is 500 minimum. It can't go under 500. So that's where you get the increased
I
severity.
thought I read it differently. My apologies.
No, that's why I'm helping you out with it.
I
It's
thought it said 250 to 500.
250 to 500 for the first one. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Now you got me. Okay, the first one was 100 to 500. The second one was 250 to 500. You want to make that one 250 to 750?
I do.
Okay, all right. I just did all that reading. I'm tired.
We're all tired.
Okay, and then the last one, the third violation, you would like to have it be what? You got the 100 to 500, the 250 to 750. Do you
Just
want the
read it
third one to
me
be up to
since-
1,000?
Just read what it says, because I don't have it with me.
Third violation, a respondent who is determined by a finding of probable cause to have violated this article for a third time shall be fined by the Board of County Commissioners not less than $500 plus the cost of investigation. And the chairperson of the Board of County Commissioners shall transmit the investigation files for all three violations to the Florida Commission on Ethics for further action in the discretion of that agency. That is the increased penalty.
I just say leave it the way it is.
Leave it that way. Well, since you have an upper limit of 750 for the second offense, do you want me to increase the upper limit
But
to
the fact it's being reported to Tallahassee, that's significant.
Okay.
Chair, I have one question.
Mr. Keith.
And I would assume that this could be handled in the paragraph that the code shall not be repealed, but shall be subject to amendment from time to time. Then we have with an affirmative vote of no fewer than 4 commissioners.
Yes, sir.
If we were to have a time where we have more commissioners, I understand the spirit of this is to be a high percentage.
Yes, sir.
Would that fall under, to be amended from time to time, or?
What I can say is, to bolster that language, I could say 4 or a supermajority of not less than 75% or something like that. Because when you say 75%,
Commissioners have to change in a charter, which you could change this at the same time.
yeah, if you wanted to.
Yeah,
So what Mr. Keith's talking about is
Okay.
yeah, we could certainly do that.
Call, Glenn.
I have one question.
Yeah, Mr.
In the recommendation, it says that it's asking to do one of the 4. Is the motion to accept all 4, or, I mean, is that how we're moving forward, or? I mean, I guess I'm a little confused about the fact, I understand that on the ballot issue will be to adopt a code of ethics, but then we have a code of ethics in here, and I know that won't be on the ballot. How exactly will that work, Joel?
Yes, sir. So based on the recommendation, you can see the ballot question is, shall the Home Rule Charter of Columbia County, Florida be amended to provide for the enactment by ordinance of a code of ethics to prescribe standards of conduct for members of the Board of County Commissioners, county employees, and members of appointed boards and committees created by the Board of County Commissioners no later than January 31st. But if you go up and actually read the language that would be inserted into the charter if that was an affirmative vote, there's language in there that says the code of ethics shall be adopted by ordinance in substantially the form approved by the 2020 Charter Review Commission on blank date. The code shall not conflict with the power of the governor, so on and so forth. So you're approving 2 ordinances. The first ordinance is to put the question on the ballot. The second ordinance you would be approving is the one that's referenced in the charter language that says you guys approve this code of ethics. And that was the extraordinary second step that the compliance committee wanted. Leon County passed a charter amendment that said, hey, you need to pass a code of ethics that has these 4 characteristics. And that's all they said. The compliance committee said, well, that's really not good enough. We want specifics. Joel, bring back a full-blown code of ethics, and then we'll bless that as a full CRC. If the voters affirm the amendment, the Board of County Commissioners will be required to adopt the code that we came up with. So you're far more, you're at the micro level now. You know, you're not at the macro level, you've gone down to the micro level. But the thought process was that the committee did not want to run the risk of the Board of County Commissioners doing anything less than what the committee wanted. And that's what's being referred to you. Do you want to impose that? If you do that, this is what will go to public hearing. This full packet, the findings, the ordinance, putting the question on the ballot, and the 30-page code of ethics that you would like to see the voters adopt. And this is the only way you can really do it. You can't have a full 30-page code of ethics in the charter.
I got you.
Thank you,
Ms. Skinner?
Mr. Foreman, the
Yes, ma'am.
issue I called you about of the dates.
I was just about to give you credit for that. So one of the things that's residual from the Leon County ordinance that I was using to sort of model this after is a December 2018 or November 2018 election dates. Clearly, we would clean that up. And thank you, Ms. Skinner. I always appreciate it when people read the reams of paper that we send out. And she called me like within an hour or so. So it's pretty impressive.
I got highlight too.
And Mr. Owens got it too, just for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Owens.
All right.
But we'll definitely clean that up if it's
Any
approved.
other discussion?
Mr. Chair, I have a few questions.
Mr. Douglas?
30 page 2 of 30, what exactly does constitute less than 100,000? What's the purpose of that in the advisory body definition?
I'm sorry.
Page 2 of 30?
I'm getting there, but I'm
Okay.
sorry. I heard you. I'm sorry. I can't get to it faster. Hold on just a second. Okay, basically, okay, so if you are in well, you're a member of the Economic Development Advisory Board. And so you would continue to be an advisory body because you don't have a budget. You don't have spending authority. What this definition is saying is, even if the board calls you an advisory body, if they give you more than $100,000 to spend, you're no longer an advisory body for purposes of the ethics code. Does that make sense? If you have the ability to spend more than $100,000, you're not an advisory body. You become a full-blown council or commission subject to the ethics
So
code.
below 100,000 and below, I don't have to worry about it. It's ethics code.
You would continue to be treated as a member of an advisory body.
And 101,000 and above, then that would
You become
the umbrella of the ethics.
more like an appointed commissioner. You become subject to a higher standard.
Okay, page 5 of 30, gift does not include.
Yes, sir.
Let's pick item 3.
Okay.
These aren't gifts.
They're not considered gifts under the state statute for gifts, honoraria, things like that. The thought process is you want to encourage your elected officials to accept honoraria, go speak on your behalf. Usually what the honoraria will do is cover your cost of your room and your travel to, some speaking event. It's not really a gift as much as it's almost like compensation for coming and participating in something. This is just out of the statute, though. You don't have to approve these. These are just things that are generally excluded from conventional gifts under the statute.
So that's the norm under
Yes, sir.
this type of write-up.
Yes, sir.
It's like you're on the fringe and you're skirting maybe a gray area.
I think what happens if you make it an ethical prohibition against honoraria, you inadvertently disqualify your elected officials, like your sheriff, for example. He's currently president of the Florida Sheriff's Association. You wouldn't necessarily want to disqualify him from accepting an honoraria to come speak somewhere if that's part of the invitation, right? It's just, again, it's out of the state statute. And so it's just generally not considered unethical to accept an honoraria because it's only for what you're actually going to do, more like conventional salary.
And I'm going to go back to Mr. Foreman, the penalties, penalty 1, 2, and 3.
Mhm.
I'm not understanding, this is my opinion, why that dollar amount is so low. I would love for that to be 1,000 on the first penalty, 2,000, 5,000 on the, up to the third penalty. $500 to $750 to me is, we're not doing anything.
Well, it's nothing right now.
Well,
And our thinking was $500 would be a lot of money to a county employee. That was our thinking.
And there is,
To a CC?
Huh?
To a county commissioner?
We're gonna, maybe not do it. I don't know. I can't speak to that issue.
well, that's why there was a little bit of latitude built into it, Stephen, Mr. Douglas, because the thought process is if it is a commissioner, it's probably going to be at the very top end of that spectrum. If it's, a greater operator, you're probably not going to hit him for $500, There's also the statute under 125 that calls for enforcement of ordinances, and it gives you $1,000 cap. So we really can't break the 1,000 anyway. So if that's kind of the top end, you have to cover the spectrum to show that it's a graduate. Now you can make it $1,000 per offense. You can do that. You can say first time it's 1,000, second time it's 1,000, third time it's 1,000, and then have other remedial measures like referral to the Ethics Commission, things like that. What the committee had talked about, I know you're on that committee, right? You're on compliance. Are you okay? It's been so long. You guys got your work done so quick.
We all don't have storage units.
But but the idea, if you remember, some of those discussions were, hey, we want it to be graduated. We want it to go up and up and up. And so that when you have $1,000 cap, you just kind of break across that spectrum and pick. This is also very similar, or no, check that, take that back. It's not. I wrote this one up. So that was the thought process.
There is $1,000 cap, there's a max.
Yeah, for violation of a county ordinance, you have $1,000 max per violation, and these are indexed per violation. So you could theoretically go through all three at one fell swoop if you had 3 separate violations that you committed at the same time. You could have probable cause determinations on all 3 violations and go through the whole. Now you're in trouble if you do that, but that's kind of where the thought process was.
One more, Mr. Chair. The penalties 1, 2, and 3, I read that only penalty 2, and I could be wrong on this, is actually coming before the Board of County Commissioners and being put out to the public as a notice. Is that?
I don't recall.
They're all penalized
I don't
by.
have it with me. You don't have it either, do you? I'm not going to print 30.
The fine is actually imposed by the Board of County Commissioners, Mr. Douglas, which means there would have to be a proceeding at which the Board of County Commissioners impose the penalty. It's not automatic.
So that would be a procedure within a meeting.
So the way this works is if there's a complaint, the first step is a determination of probable cause. And so my office would investigate most complaints and basically talk to the interested witnesses, talk to the respondent, talk to the complainant, figure out, is there actually reason to believe that this offense occurred? If there's enough evidence to support probable cause, the county attorney has to reduce that to writing and tell the respondent, you've been determined to have violated this. The respondent then has a right to appeal that finding to the Board of County Commissioners. The county attorney's wrong, and here's why. If he doesn't appeal or she doesn't appeal, then it becomes basically it's done. There's no further process other than the penalty phase. And so the penalty phase would be coming back and saying, hey, I entered a finding of probable cause against Mr. Smith. More than 30 days have passed without an appeal. According to the ordinance, he's subject to a fine between $150 and $500, whatever it is. What's the pleasure of the board? Then the Board of County Commissioners would take it up for consideration and say, we're going to sanction him this. And I could even have a recommendation. That's kind of like how code enforcement works. I could even have a recommendation, say, based on what I found in the probable cause determination, it was an innocent mistake. I recommend the low end of the spectrum versus, I've got 5 emails where he said, hey, I know I'm breaking the law, but I'm going to do it anyway. You guys really need to hit this guy. So I would have some input on that, sort of like as a prosecuting attorney, but the board would have the final say on the sanction. The reason there's a minimum and a maximum is the board couldn't say 0 if there was no appeal.
Mr. Chairman, just a follow-up on what you just said. So it would be the county commission determination on what the severity of the fine is going to be.
Yes, sir.
Now, what kind of criteria would you use, or is it based on the severity of the offense? And I think somebody was alluding, and I think you said that if somebody, works for the county government making $100,000, $250 is not very much. So I think that would be a monetary salary scale.
No. Yes, sir, Mr. John. And I think you're on the right. That's exactly right. So when you look at the first violation, right now, the way it reads is first violation, a respondent who is determined by finding a probable cause to have violated this article for the first time, which is any of the ethics regulations in there, shall be fined by the Board of County Commissioners. So this is where you keep the board from going to 0, right? You can't just give him a pass. Not less than $100 and no more than $500. So under your scenario, if a grader operator came in and he made some sort of a relatively innocent mistake, but there was still a finding of probable cause, that's another place where the investigation could bear out and say, there's no probable cause to believe a violation occurred here. This was a mistake, whatever the case may be. But if I've determined, or if my successor has determined, no, there is a violation, then the board is starting at $100 and going up to $500. Most cases, if code enforcement is a guide, you're going to be on the low end of the spectrum for a first offense. So, and then that same process would apply on the second, except your range shifts up. And then on the third, your range shifts up. So that's why we let the elected officials exercise discretion to a degree. So that it still has teeth, but you have the ability to soften it a little bit. My expectation is you'll have very, very few cases that'll ever actually get to that point. So that by the time one does reach that point, you're going to have the board's going to have to do something.
Mr. Chairman, I call for the question.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded to move this to the next phase. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed likewise. The ayes have it. That moves on to the next phase of the board.
Yes, sir. And with that, Mr. Chair, I want to talk to you guys very briefly about the progress sheets. I've got a little bit of good news that'll make it worth staying to the end of the meeting. All items that were pending further action by the CRC have now either been rejected, referred to the county manager, the Board of County Commissioners, or have been approved and cleared for public hearing. And as such, until the public hearings, there's really not any more work for you guys to do. So you may not realize it, but you've kind of reached your finish line with tonight's votes.
I second that one.
What's that?
I second whatever we did.
Well, in any of it, no. So we had to kind of keep our meeting schedule tight because, depending on how the vote on at-large voting went, depending on what your response to the ethics code was, we needed to hold those times open. But now we're going to shift into that public hearing schedule. What I would recommend is let's keep Tuesday night's meeting on the book for now, because we might be able to have a little 30 to 45 minute session where we talk about the public hearings and what we're going to do. And then you guys might be able to take a short vacation as a reward for your diligent work these last few weeks. But that's the update on the activity sheet. I'll finalize that based on what happened tonight. But the next activity sheet you see is going to have full disposition on everything going into public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask
Yes, ma'am.
I know several of the county commissioners on their letters, they questioned about the terms of office, when they could take office. That was one of the issues. I don't believe they ever came into first committee.
No, ma'am, that never did. And I've actually rendered an opinion to Commissioner Witt on that when that occurred.
I just want to be sure it's taken care of.
Yes, my suggestion, and if the board wants to entertain that, I know other attorneys around the state will frequently do editorial notes on different provisions of the charter to just say, hey, this question came up in 2019. This is how it was resolved, so that future attorneys who go back and review the same note can have the same resolution. So it's not quite as forceful as an amendment, but I think it does address Commissioner Witt's concern. It's one of those things where I think I told you guys we could do 1,000 things to the charter. There's all kinds of things we could do. That's one of the things I think we can accomplish short of a full-blown amendment. And I'll take care of that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman? Well, I make a motion, we approve Joel's.
I second the motion.
On the attorney invoices, have a motion to approve in the second. Mr. Autumn made the motion and Mr. Foreman seconded it. All in favor of paying the attorneys signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed likewise. The ayes have it. They can get paid. So as you said, Mr. Foreman, the next meeting is we're still holding for the 26th.
Yes, sir. It'll be this Tuesday night. It'll be Tuesday instead of Monday because of the Memorial Day holiday.
Okay, sir. And a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Adjourn.
I want their chairs next time. Kim, we're going to spot next time.
Yeah.